Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel, everyone. Hello, Maverick family. Great to have everybody here. Special broadcast tonight, and I know a lot of people have been waiting for this one. Not going to go down exactly the way we had planned, but we still have some riveting information that I think you will find enlightening. All of it surrounding that controversial open-air biolab out in British Columbia, that Universal Ostrich Farm. It's the story that just won't go away.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, I'm back, and just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, big story, fresh, brand new, breaking tonight. Congress has passed the bill to force the release of the Epstein files. But before we get into that, let's bring in our guest tonight, Jason LaFace.
What's going on, everybody? How's it going?
Just fine. Thanks for joining us tonight.
For sure.
Yeah, so Jason's here to help us unpack this Universal Ostrich Farm story. But Jason, before we get into that, we have to share this with people because it is the number one, it's the lead story on all, major news platforms tonight. This is NBC's version of this story regarding the bill to order the release of the Epstein files.
Oh, yeah.
Good day. I'm Hallie Jackson in Washington, and we are coming on the air with breaking news just seconds ago. A landslide vote in the House of Representatives on a bill that would try to force the release of DOJ documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, which started as a long shot bid months ago, now one step closer to becoming law. This was a nearly unanimous vote. The final vote, 427-1, just hours after some Epstein survivors gathered at the Capitol to rally support. So next step, the Senate, and then on to the White House for the president to sign this into law if it passes that chamber. The president now says he'll do that in a surprising political pivot after months of resistance to backing the bill. Joining us now is our chief Capitol Hill correspondent, Ryan Nobles. And Ryan, this vote just seconds ago now takes this one step closer to reality for the survivors and other advocates who have been fighting for it. The question had been just how many Republicans would get on board. The answer appears to be all but one.
That's right, Hallie. And as this resolution was officially gavelled and signed through the House of Representatives, there were cheers in the gallery just a few feet from where I'm standing. And we're told that there were survivors of the Epstein saga that were in the gallery watching as this vote took place. And you're right, it was an overwhelming passage, 427 voting in the affirmative, only one nay, and that is Congressman Clay Higgins, who released a statement saying that he is what he described a principled no on this, saying that he has issues with the bill. And of course, Republicans in Congress, including the Speaker of the House, have said from the very beginning that they had issues with the way that this discharge petition, as it's called, came to be. The discharge petition is a maneuver that rank and file House members can use to bring a piece of legislation to the floor outside of House leadership. This was initially something that Republicans fought right up until the last minute. There was a group of breakaway Republicans that joined with Democrats to force this to the floor. But once it became a reality that this was something that House members were going to be forced to vote on, Republicans quickly came around and decided that it was responsible and smart for them to vote yes, including the Speaker himself. Today, though, he did hold a press conference and discuss his issues with the bill. He's concerned that it doesn't do enough to protect survivors, that it could put potential victims of child sex abuse at risk of their information being made public, and that it could compromise future investigations. The supporter of this package say that they've written the bill in a way that would solve and deal with all these issues that the Speaker has. He's asking the Senate to change it, Hallie, and of course that is the next big question we have, how the Senate will deal with this, and we could find that out here in the next hour or so when the Senate convenes.
Explain that, Ryan, because you now have the top Senate Democrat, Chuck Schumer, suggesting that he will try to bring this to the floor. He will try to take action, possibly in the next several hours here tonight. Of course, it would need Republican support. What are you hearing from that side of the Capitol?
Well, there's two ways that this could go once it reaches the Senate, Hallie. There's a very quick way, and then there's a much more lengthy and arduous process that this resolution could take. If they take the route that Speaker Johnson is suggesting, it could delay the passage and the release of these files indefinitely. So Speaker Johnson is asking for a long list of amendments to be added to this bill. That would require deliberations and negotiations among senators to craft the language that would make them feel more comfortable with voting yes. It would then have to come back here to the House for another vote before it made it to the president's desk. This doesn't seem to be something that most rank and file Republicans want to deal with right now because it keeps the story in the forefront. It's something that we'll continue to ask questions about. The other alternative they have is that they can do as Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has suggested and just bring the bill to the floor this afternoon and vote on it, perhaps even by a vehicle called unanimous consent, where they just put it on the floor and say, is everybody okay with this? And if no one objects, the bill passes. That would prevent Republicans from having to deal with the continued questions about this, and it would also send the bill to President Trump's desk as soon as this evening. Now, we don't know which way the Senate Majority Leader John Thune wants to go as it relates to this package. He's deflected all questions about the Epstein saga from the very beginning, saying that this resolution was just a hypothetical issue because the Senate or the House had yet to pass it. It is no longer a hypothetical issue. It is something he's going to have to deal with. And Hallie, we've talked to many Republicans already on the Senate side who said that the bill should come to the floor and that they plan to vote yes. So much like how we saw it play out here in the House, if it makes it to the floor, it will absolutely get at least the 60 votes necessary. The question right now is in the hands of John Thune as to when the bill could make it to the floor and how quickly there'll be a vote.
427 to 1.
You know what, though? When you think about it, they'd put all that effort in the Epstein files, but they won't put nothing in about the UFO files.
Well, there you go. Actually, you know what? I'm finishing up post-production on our own production of War of the Worlds with some twists and turns in it. And I think, folks, I know a lot of you have been waiting, and some of you have been participants in this. You're players in this theatrical production, and maybe this Friday night, if I can pull another all-nighter or two on post, we'll have it done for this Friday. So something to look forward to. It's War of the Worlds, the musical. It's actually pretty good. I think it's good anyway. If I do say on behalf of everyone involved, it's going to be fun. Anyway, Jason, the story at hand tonight, Universal Ostrich Farm. You have been doing some additional digging. I know that you were doing research before. You've been on the program as one of our call-in guests, sharing some of your research. And you have a treasure trove of new information to share with us tonight. Now, I know you had invited Dave Belinski, one of the co-owners of the farm, to join us this evening. And what's the status with that?
All right. Well, so I'll just say how things started. As you know, like all of us there's a lot of us, like yourself and I and others, who have been looking into the backstory of the farm since it began, really. And there's been inconsistencies in the story. So there's been a lot of this. I don't know, like we all agree the method of the CFIA, what they did to these birds was wrong. We know that the policy needs to change. However, let alone there's all this other stuff going on. So there's this divide amongst my friends. And I was just like, I'm concerned. So I decided to really dive into everything. So a couple of my friends and I decided to start calling and verifying everybody they've mentioned in their documents. That's their board of directors, their chair, all of it, right? And then even the companies they were working with as well, just to fact check things. And it took us a while because we started in May and we just finished up recently. So I guess they got wind of me doing this research because the last person I had to call on the list was Stu Greenberg. And he immediately called them, and I got a phone.
You better tell people who Stu Greenberg is. He's with this
he's with Ostrich
in the U.S.
Yeah, so he has a company, two companies, as a matter of fact, called Ostrich Inc., and the other one is Ostrich Pharma Inc., or USA, sorry. Mm-hmm. And these companies, I'll get to that in a minute. But anyways, I called because I want to verify some information based on what was in the documents, the court documents and stuff. And when I spoke to Stu, he explained to me that he was not a medical doctor. He wasn't a scientist. And immediately I started, there was inconsistencies in this whole thing, right? Just what he was saying. So he, after I got off the phone with him, I guess he called the Eppersons, and I received a phone call the next day from...
And the Eppersons, for people who maybe aren't familiar with the story, because there could be some people, they're the other co-owners of the farm.
Yeah, so Karen Epperson and David Belinski called me. So on the documents, they are both listed as CEO, presidents, and vice presidents, and in different positions with other companies they own. Mm-hmm. So they are primarily the farm. So when I started talking to both of them on the phone when they called, at first it was pretty rough around the edge with Karen because she immediately started freaking out in the background. But David seemed to be forthcoming. So I spent 2 days talking to David about all these questions that many of us had over the last year, about, the property, the NDA, everything, that, work with the doctor and all this stuff. Now, during my research, I uncovered a lot. So at the end of the day yesterday, he had said to me that he was willing to entertain an interview tonight with me. This is Dave
Belinski you're talking about.
Yeah. And I waited all day because what he said to me yesterday is he wanted me to send him a list of questions, right? And it was basically questions that I had talked to him over the last day or so. And I outlined them into my email, and I said, okay. And then he said that he had to get Katie and them to approve it, right? So he would call me back on that. So when he called me 40 minutes before this show, and said that he can't do it right now and he's busy and stuff. So my thing is this: I've given an opportunity because it's pretty serious information that people, it's been floating around, and we fact checked quite a bit of stuff. So my concern is there's people out there that are supporting this, and there's this offspring so-called convoy and all this stuff. And I mean, this has got to stop, right? Like, we all agree there's an issue, and I think what we should be doing is if we're going to work the process to make change on policies, there's a way to do it. You know what I mean? But grifting and taking money from people and lying to people and stuff and misrepresenting who they are. And you know what I mean? It's just, that I'm sorry. And they're using, for me, what bothers me the most is I helped organize so many protests during COVID and part of the Freedom Convoy that this stuff is all springing off the convoy. And for the main organizers, you know what I mean? Every time that shit goes down and it ends up failing, and it makes us look bad at what we've done. We're always getting the flack of it all the time because it's the Freedom Convoy. You know what I mean? So my thing is, I think we're 2025. That was 3 years ago. We need to move forward. And when people go and stand for something, I think they deserve to know the truth of what they're standing up for. You know what I mean? So it's transparent for everyone. That's all.
And you have a valid point, because I mean, even over here, mainstream media, CTV, valid questions for CFIA, but few simple answers. In wake of the BC ostrich cull, this isn't a new issue. Is the stamping out policy for poultry farms effective? Should it continue? But it's not a simple yes or no answer. And the thing is, it's like, if you're going to deal with the issue. There are productive and constructive ways to do that. And then there are other ways that maybe don't lead to such great outcomes. And all through this, what I was hearing from the farm was a lot of complaints and a lot of claims about herd immunity, none of which was really backed up with any real studies or valid science, which is why they kept losing in court, and no real alternative plan. Like they never really presented some alternative to the stamping out policy, but they just say they want change. Well, I want to know what the change is going to be before I burn something down, right? That's where I come from on a lot of this stuff. And this is kind of what I'm hearing from you. It's like, okay, well, a lot of people have concerns with the stamping out policy, but what's the process? What's a good process through which you can approach this to affect real change and do that effectively?
Yeah, no, I think that the problem between, I understand that the CFIA has been destroying animals right across BC particularly. Okay, so, and yes, I understand we have to have safety protocols and health measures in place to protect us, to make sure our food is safe to eat. I totally get that. And I also understand that viruses do spread, and I understand how this virus affects other flocks. Like, I actually looked into all this. So on one hand, I understand the science and stuff, but on the other hand, we have a policy that sometimes I feel is excessive in some areas. So there's been cases where, the farms, they go in, they test just a couple animals and then they just destroy the whole thing. But I look at the economic value at the situation. It's because it's a per situation thing, right? Case per case. Yeah. So hypothetically, let's say we look at a farm that has 25,000 bovine, and let's say some of the bovine get tested that they're sick. Now,
I mean, we're beginning to compare apples and oranges.
No, because they did this with a flock of birds in BC with what was it, 44,000 poultry birds, right? So the policy that's there, like, I understand why it's there. But on the other hand, it's how this all played out. Okay, so there's some inconsistencies, which we all know about. But the change should be that maybe we should look at how is there other ways we can do things that might not have to destroy an entire investment on a farm in that sense, right? So, and the other thing too is I didn't agree with using the RCMP shooting because they set up a shooting gallery is what it was. So that wasn't cool in my view. I think there should have been a different, like a more humane way to do things, so, but
and I understand, and it sounds horrific. I don't think there's any way to cull animals that would be pleasant or palatable to the public to watch or be aware of, right? So there's no way to kill all those birds in a manner that isn't going to offend some people, obviously. That being said, subtlety, nuance is important here. Detail is important. The farm owners could have prevented that kind of culling if they had cooperated with the CFIA from the beginning. They were offered compensation from the very beginning, substantial amount of money, $3,000 per bird. They, at that point, could have culled the birds themselves in any manner that they chose to do it. And and I asked Katie when she was on the program, how did you slaughter the birds when you were a food production farm, when you were selling the birds for food? And she said they used the halal method, which means that they slit their throats and let them bleed to death. She didn't want to get into the details of it, but she said that right on the program. That's what she told me. So that's how they would have done it. They would have slit the birds' throats. The CFIA kind of backed into a corner where they didn't have a lot of options, because you had a giant protest going on, because they had to just all these different factors. And for whatever reason, they chose the last resort, which was to shoot the birds. Was that inhumane? I have to say that this is where the freedom people and these influencers, this is where they lose me. There were allegations that the birds were being beheaded so that the marksman could take trophies. In other words, take the heads home. Oh yes, Mr. Craden. That's what he was suggesting on his podcast.
I don't think that ever happened,
because they were talking about how these birds were beheaded because some of the birds are missing heads. The reason they were missing the heads was because the marksmen were actually shooting them in the heads if they could. They were trying to shoot them in the head because that was instant death. That is humane. If you blow the bird's head off, excuse me for being so graphic, but if you shoot the bird in the head, right in the brain, they're taking the bird's head right off. That's the way. No. That's humane. It's instant, painless, and it's over instantly. Not like 3 minutes or however long it takes for the bird to bleed to death if you slit their throats. So I don't know which would be more humane, having the farm owners slit the throats of the birds or just shoot them in the head and have it done instantly.
My wife told me, she asked me the same question. What would you do? Because she agrees with you, actually. Like, she does agree with you. And a lot of my friends agree with you. And I don't know why. I don't know. But for me, I thought about, my wife thinks I'm more morbid, but I thought it was more humane to give it via the feed. But then she's like, yeah, well, then they're going to suffer, right? And I was like, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think
suffering. Yeah. And in addition to that, the other reason they did it this way is because the protesters, the live streamers kept saying, well, they're not wearing the marshmallow chutes, those marksmen. Yeah, because by shooting them, they shot them from a distance, never came into contact with the birds. If they'd been wearing the marshmallow quarantine suits, that would have impeded their ability to handle their firearms. Difficult to look through a shield.
Yeah, the shooting zone was set up exactly as as if you were going to a shooting range,
right?
And I seen how it was set up.
So that's why, and because those birds, ostriches are very powerful. They're dangerous to handle. They can kill you or seriously injure you. So they wanted to minimize contact. They didn't want to put the contractors at risk. I can understand why they resorted to shooting the ostriches as opposed to having each one rounded up and have a hood put over its head and corralled over here and then sedated and then euthanized using whatever manner. That's a lot of handling, a lot of work. It's dangerous for the handlers, especially if the birds aren't familiar with the handlers. Maybe the farm owners could have done it in a way where the birds wouldn't have been as excitable and maybe in a safer manner. But at the end of the day, I don't know if it's any more humane to let the farm owners take a knife and slit the throats of the birds so they can bleed to death slowly, or shoot them in the head and have an instant death. You can pick, folks, or just have some other, I don't know. You can have your own opinion on it is the point. And I'm not advocating for any of it. I'm just laying out the information. I didn't want to see the birds die.
No, I think what should have happened, like, to be honest with you, I think what should have happened was they should have allowed them to do continual testing over a few weeks. Right.
You know what, Jason?
But they didn't do that. So I mean, I did read the policy.
Practically, they couldn't because it's logistically, it's extremely expensive. It sets a precedent. They used lawfare to create legal delays, to drag this thing out for almost an entire year, while at the same time accusing the government of using the court system against them in a corrupt manner where they weren't being given due process. And in reality, they were given nothing but due process.
Yeah, that's why I'm on this show today, because that's, you know what I mean? So first of all, we've all been researching what's been going on the backstory of the farm. Yeah. A lot of us have been taking flack for it. And like I've said to everybody, look, I support one thing, but the one thing, it's about truth, and it's always been about that. And I've had friends threatened for asking questions.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
the way I look at it is this: what I think happened, and according from what David had said to me, was the fact that he reached out to Stu Greenberg of Ostrich Farm USA, and this is where this all started.
Okay.
Now, when I look at the affidavit that David has in court, and just back checking all the stuff that's been said and stuff, you clearly see that there's a lot of, I'm sorry, but there's lies, right? Now, here's the biggest one that I've found so far, let alone what's been going on at the farm, was the fact that on their board of directors, when they submitted the information to the court as an affidavit, stated that they had an individual that was their chief of staff or their chief medical officer, right? And she's been dead since 2020. And I asked Karen Epperson that when she called me, and she was like, she just lost it. She's like, you guys are trying to, and I'm like, no. I said, I'm giving you guys the opportunity to tell the truth. I said, so why is it that you have somebody listed on your board of directors, Carol Epstein, and she passed away in 2020? And I confirmed that with Dr. Judith Berger out of New York, who took over her position. So when I looked at all this and looked at all the names, like when we were going through the names, most of these names were coming out of, it was Stu Greenberg that got these names. That's obviously because they were all in Boston, where he's from. And it looks like it was.
And again, Stu Greenberg is the guy who set up this Ostrich Farm USA company, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it looks like, in a sense, you have Stu Greenberg here, who looks like he swindled the farm in a way, right? Mm-hmm. So I did a fact check. We did some back checking on Stu himself, and it's not the first time that Mr. Stu has these fake startup for seed money based on lies. So the first one was he stated that this is in 2016. He did a press release.
Although we got to be careful here because these are allegations, right?
You can all check this online yourselves. Okay, so in his case, Stu Greenberg, I have a file here on him. So in 2016, on a press release, he lied about a partnership in research, which today has no study data and nothing's been presented to the public. And when we looked at this was an attempt to look for investors for seed money startup. Now, there is a link to this where he put the press release out, and it's with meindia.net, and you can Google it. I have the link. Now, on March 31st, 2020, okay, when we found out he did this in 2016 and nothing happened, this was with Ostrogen, okay, his first company that he did. Same type of thing. He took research study from another medical research company and said that he had partnered with them. He did all these press releases and to try and get, this is a con that's common online. Now, nothing happened. Then you fast forward, this is in 2016, then you fast forward into 2020, and in February of 2020, Dr. Tsukamoto he published his research on the COVID vaccine with the masks and the nasal spray. Okay, so it was like at the end of February, he released that data and he went public about it.
And Dr. Yasuro Tsukamoto is the Dean of the Graduate School of Life and Environmental Sciences at Kyoto Prefectural University and CEO, it says here, of Ostrich Farm USA, which is the information that was conveyed to Biospace, an online publication, which was promoting this.
Yes. So, and again, we looked into Biospace and all these other organizations. So the internet is also a tool that could be used for misinformation. So what you see and what you don't look at is the fact that Biospace is just a press release portal that you can launch a press release on. Okay. Not only, it's not just Biospace. You could do this with prnews.com as well. So that's what Stu did in 2016, the same thing. Now you fast forward to 2020, right after Tsukamoto published his research, March 30th and March 31st, Stu then goes and does more press releases, which was published on Biospace, PRNR News, and where did I mark the other one? No. And he said that he was partnered with Dr. Tsukamoto, and that Dr. Tsukamoto was his business partner for this company, Ostrich Pharma USA, which is not true. Okay, so it's not true. Now, he's trying to sell.
Why are you saying it's not true?
Because there's no documentation of it at all whatsoever. And when I asked Stu, when I talked to him, he said that no, that he was just talking to him. They were working on a business plan. So how does it go from working on a business plan to saying that you're actually him on advertising and putting into courts? None of it's true. And I don't think the courts verified any of this information, right? So that's what we did, is we went to the horse's mouths to try and get information from everybody about what was going on at this farm and their claims within the courts and stuff. So on one hand, when we start profiling Stu Greenberg, we start finding out that he's been involved in previous things, which is online. I won't say that just to, so people can go look themselves, but it just shows an MO of a guy trying to look for, basically running a con to try and find seed money. And what I think happened in this case, part of it, it's not all of it, part of this is that I think Belinski, when because he called Stu, he contacted Stu first. And Stu's the one who's been feeding the Belinskis. Yeah, I've been working with Tsukamoto, all this stuff. So the only thing I asked for sure, 100% for sure, was, do you have any proof that you could prove to people that you communicated with Tsukamoto? And he said, by email. Now, I'm just going to say this. Con jobs like this for investment seed money, which is a common scam in the financial markets, these guys will fabricate things to make someone believe they're talking to someone. Okay, so I believe there's a con going on with this, just by profiling Stu Greenberg himself and looking at past stuff he's done in the past. So when I look at this, it's the same MO. He's looking to work with people to try and run research or seed money and then make products and all this stuff. So when you look at the business plan,
I need to caution you here. I mean, you're accusing someone of running a fraud con job. That's a strong allegation. Do you have receipts or proof to back that up?
I mean, hey, just go look at his past stuff. I mean, look at there's publications on mediaindia.net, and it says Ostrich Gen announces new study using ostrich antibodies in the treatment of C. difficile infection. Now, what's that tell you? Okay, so doesn't that sound familiar? I'll bring it up for a second. Give me a second so I can read it to people. All right, so this is what the backstory is on the first case in 2016. So in Maltham, Massachusetts, where he lives, he put out a press release through PR Newswire on December 5th, 2016. Ostrogen Inc. is announcing a collaborative study with Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, BIDM, on the use of orally administered ostrich antibodies in the treatment of Clostridium difficile infection, C. difficile. C. difficile is resistant, and it goes on about how the antibiotics and stuff. And then he's saying that they're using the ostrich, and this is where it gets with the ostriches. Ostriches are the oldest bird species on the planet, and their immune system is unusually powerful, rapidly producing antibodies, and it goes into the antigens and all this stuff. So it looked like they were trying to do this study on the effectiveness on C. difficile toxins, and they would produce, get this, they would produce the inactive toxins at the BIDMC's facility that would be injected into ostriches at Ostrogen's facility in Japan. Okay, now this research is, again, Dr. Tsukamoto's research, all stuff in Japan that he's doing. So in 2016, it looked like that Stu Greenberg was taking research study again from Dr. Tsukamoto to try and manufacture, because that's what it looks like. And there's nothing that's come about this with Greenberg at all in with his company with that. There's no record of it anywhere, other than if you look at the research and you look at all the work that the doctor has done. The doctor worked with a clinic in Japan with the nasal spray testing for COVID, which required 5 to 6 nasal sprays per day, right? And it so wasn't effective. So they stopped producing it. The other one was the glow in the dark masks. There was no other research that was put out for COVID, and they never worked with that farm. So when the story came out that, remember when I witnessed this on your show, Katie stated that the Japanese students went to the farm and injected those birds. That's not the case. Yeah, she said that.
Dr. Pellick talked about it. I don't remember what she said with regard to the students from Japan.
Yeah, no, she did say that. And that was right before Jim Kerr took over. She started getting upset because you were asking her some tough questions. And that was one of them that did come up. You'll have to go back on. I remember that. So, I mean, there's just been so many different stories that's been said by Katie. Okay, first of all. And then when you look at the court documents and you say, okay, well, where's the actual research data of this farm? And that's how this all, they don't have any. That's how this all started with me, because I said, you know, in all fairness for everybody, why didn't they just give the research data to prove that they were actually doing something?
That's right. Because they don't have any research data.
There's absolutely
on the COVID stuff, because they weren't the ones doing the research.
That's right.
You know, they did indicate, and they did say, Dr. Pellick also confirmed that the birds were injected with antigens at the farm. He was aware of it. He didn't do it, but he testified in court under oath that this was happening.
Yeah. And David, I asked him that. I said, how did you guys do this process? So this is what he told me. He said that he was working with Frederick Leduc of Immune Biosystems at the time. Okay.
Immune Biosolutions. Yeah.
Biosolutions. Yeah. And how it worked is Immune Bio would send over a sample over to the farm via Purelator at the height of COVID. And the farm, which was David, he said he would inject the birds. And then when they produced an egg, they would take an egg yolk sample and they would freeze it, put it in the freezer, and then they would send it out and send it back to the lab in Quebec. Now, think about that just for a second. Now, if it's frozen and you're gonna send it by Purelator back to Quebec, by the time it's thawed, right? Like, so that part I just don't believe. And then so I looked like,
well,
again,
you can freeze stuff and you can send it in coolers with ice packs around it and keep it frozen for extended periods, even days. So you can send it overnight, no problem, because they send pharmaceuticals out that way all the time to patients.
Yeah. So what I asked him was, it says, well, if there was that, okay, then obviously there would be a paper trail. So that's where I asked Belinski this, because on one hand, you got Katie stating that they can't divulge any information at all because of this NDA. So this is where
the NDA is just again, so people understand, the farm was involved with Immune Biosolutions in whatever kind of research they were doing with mainly chickens, but also some ostrich stuff. We know because we ran even video here I can prove it, where the Immune Biosolutions out of Montreal, using government grants dating all the way back to 2013, was doing work with ostrich antibodies and chicken antibodies, all the way dating back to that time. And the farm says that they got involved with Immune Biosolutions, and that brings us to where we're at here.
Yeah. So this is where it gets interesting. So at first it was Katie stated that Luc Paquette, who is the ex-CEO of the board of Immune Biosolutions, he took over Frederick Leduc's position, and it was just temporary. So now he's working lobby and stuff. So the story that I got was that they had made an agreement with this Luc guy. Now that's not true, because when we called Immune Bio in Montreal, and I actually spoke to both Luc and Bruno, who's basically the new CEO. Now they told me there was no NDA signed with the farm whatsoever. They didn't do anything with them. That's exactly what I got told from them. So that I was like, okay, well, what the hell? So then when I talked to David about it and I asked him about that, he said, no, we worked with Frederick Leduc. So then I looked into that, and yeah, Frederick Leduc was in fact co-founder of Immune Biosolutions. So then I asked him, I said, well, did you guys sign an NDA with them? He's like, no, we didn't. He's like, so I said, okay. So then when I looked at his affidavit, because he said it's all in the affidavit. So I looked at the affidavit, and then the only thing in the affidavit is an agreement on licensing where there was not even any research done yet. There was nothing. It talks about licensing something that's potential, and they were just talking about that. And
I also, and this goes back months, but I phoned Immune Biosolutions and I did speak to someone in the lab. They indicated that that farm did have some involvement with that company out of Montreal. And when it changed hands, this person also confirmed that the involvement between the farm and the company came to an end at that point because they had new ownership. What the reasons were for that have never been being disclosed. We don't know.
Yeah,
but they were involved.
So I'm confused because Immune Biosolution never got bought out. There was no buyout. There was no shutdown. There was nothing. They just changed hands.
There was some sort of a change in ownership structure.
No, all there was is this. Okay, so Frederick Leduc was a co-founder and president of Immune Biosolutions. Okay, so what happened is he apparently, according to David and the document that I seen in his affidavit, shows that there was a communication solely on licensing and patenting a potential. Okay, that's it. Now, when we looked at Mr. Leduc, we also seen that yes, he did leave Immune Bio, but he went now he works for Quebec Bio, which is a whole nother company doing totally something different. Now, at the time, okay, they say it's because this company shut down or whatever. The company never shut down. What happened is the company ended up getting $13.44 million and a grant from the government to research COVID-19 on poultry products only. That's it, for birds, for chickens. And that's where the direction was. They changed it up. And then even Paquette, who took over Frederick's job, okay, he was interim CEO, and then now he's head of lobbying. He does all the lobbying for government interaction now, and you can verify this. And it's in the lobbying database. Everything I'm saying is true. You can verify it. So I did speak to them, and they told me though there was never an NDA and there was never anything done with them. And that's coming from them.
Yeah, I think that maybe the confusion around ownership comes from the fact that, and I just looked this up, the company never actually sold, but there have been changes in ownership structure. So that's probably where this confusion comes from. I can also tell you that I spoke to a woman who worked for a public relations firm that did work with Immune Biosolutions to do media releases at the time of the acquisition of some of these federal grants during the COVID period. And she told me that what happened at that time was with the ostrich stuff, that was a one-off news release that they did. So there was some sort of involvement there, but how extensive, how involved the Ostrich Farm was with the company, another sort of loose end and weird stuff going on.
Yeah, because we went over the media stuff that Immune put out, with like all their feeds, everything, and we couldn't find anything that they published in relations to working with that Ostrich Farm either. So it sort of collaborates what I was told by Bruno and Mr. Paquette from Immune, and they've heard about it. Now the other thing too is we looked in to see if there was other farms in Quebec, and there's only a couple small ostrich farms. One is actually a petting zoo sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's still some unanswered questions, but it looks like there's some type of, just based on the rule set. First of all, I don't believe that the government of Canada under approval. So this is exactly what Bruno had stated to me too. The reason why they didn't do anything with that farm, especially in terms of shipping and something that's contaminated across the country, because first of all, they have to get approval from Health Canada to do this kind of thing right before the get-go. They can't just send a sample from their labs, which is a level 2, level 3 bio containment or bio antigen. or even a live virus, or even if it's dead, they still can't do it. There's regulations for that, and it has to be done in a different, like the ostriches would have to be on site for them to do that. They won't just ship it across the country. And the reason why is two things. One is they would lose their licenses if they got caught by the CFIA and the federal government. They just acquired $14 million in grants at the time, and there was no way they were going to risk anything to lose that grant, and or their private investors that fund the company itself, and then risk everything just for, to start sending samples illegally to the farm in BC. It just doesn't work like that. And I got to explain that the way the things work is there's a containment. You have to have the facility for it. You got to have special quarantine zones. You have to have a proper waste management disposal for droppings that could be contaminated once you inject the birds, because it'll, once your birds are injected, they're contaminated. And the whole thing is you have to inject the birds to contaminate the birds and with the virus, so that they produce it in the egg yolk. So that's where they extract the antigen for possible research to see if it will fight off a virus or an illness or whatever they're doing for research, right? So
you're kind of missing one thing here. The farm doesn't care about the rules, and they were doing all kinds of things that weren't in compliance with that. They didn't follow any rules ever at any time, not just with the CFIA situation, but even before that. Here's a post of them, I'll say allegedly, even though this is a post showing, where's my tab? Here it is here. This is a post on Twitter. We ordered 2 eggs from the Second Chance Ranch. They were helpful, in the packaging of the eggs is amazing. And it looks like these are eggs that are being shipped across the border. And I don't know if they had permits for any of this. Let me see if I can get you a different. I have more than one of these. Bottom line is, this farm, they're just part of this community where they engage in activities that just skirt all the rules.
Well, this is what people don't know. Okay. So in their court documents, they make it sound like they're working with all these research companies. And one of them is Strethio Biosciences, right? Which is, they own it.
Yeah.
Now, how could you own a bioscience company, which is, this is biosecurity. This is, come on. You don't have a facility. You don't have nothing set up on the farm that shows that you are actually doing approved scientific research on birds, first of all. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's number one. And to do what they're saying, to even do what they're claiming they were doing, requires a scientific infrastructure in place. I mean, there's a protocol for zoonotics. If people don't know what zoonotics is, go read up on it. And I mean, there's a protocol for that, and that's not even being followed. So, you just have to look at all this stuff and say, okay, well, what was before, and even before, like you said, even prior to all this stuff, the forest fire stuff, they didn't want to do anything about that. There's been an ongoing stuff in the past too. So my thing is this: I think a lot of people got fooled. Regardless of what happened to the birds, I feel, and I'm empathetic to that. But at the end of the day, like, I would have never. That's why I didn't show up there. That's why I didn't. Play part of that, because I just knew that it's not based on truth, right? I can't stand up for that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and people are texting me. I'm getting shit, I think.
Of course, because what we're talking about is technical, and we're talking about legal things, not emotional things. On the other side, they've been using emotion to sell their narrative.
And that's another thing, like, when you look at this and okay, so another thing that David did lie to me about, I asked him specifically this question. I said, you claim to the public in the court that you stopped using the birds for meat production, oil and anything like that, right? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. But in 2024, one of his companies was advertising the sale of products, right? So they were obviously still doing it. And I wish I had it right now, but on Facebook, I seen a thing where, remember that guy that tried to burn, that had the gasoline there with the neighbor, that incident?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So there was a post on Facebook. I took a screenshot. I'll have to find it. But anyways, he was there sitting there, okay, in London, Ontario, at some fundraiser in Ontario, and he was selling ostrich eggs from the farm. And he had a picture and it said $20 an egg and whatever that was on it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, like, a lot of people have now said, okay, well, if you were injecting the birds and all these birds in 2020, 2021, then what are you doing selling contaminated products to the market like that? Like,
Right.
and then say what, you're going to eat it and then be immune to that virus? Is that what we're thinking here? Because that's not how it works.
That's exactly right. It doesn't work like that at all. And we've shown on this program that they were selling eggs to families and with children even after they were doing the research. So they've turned they turned the birds into lab rats, and then they were selling the eggs to unsuspecting families so they could take them home and eat them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't do that. You shouldn't do that.
So this is where I'm at with this whole story. Now, I think it's just based on a fraud. I think that they tried to take someone else's research to create a product and try to seed money for it to fund. And I'll take the flack for this. This is my own opinion, everybody, based on the research I've done, based on the research that other folks like Rick and other people have done. You guys done a great job at doing some really tough research, man. We all got good information. And I used a lot of what you guys had to dig deeper. And I'm sorry, but I believe that this whole backstory is just another scam, just like previously before, because this happened in the past. If you look at their history and their previous history with another farm, other farms, and the SEC stuff, it's the same track record. They were going broke. They were probably trying to seed money because they knew their farm was getting out of control. In 2018, they didn't even have that many birds. And there's an article even that's public within their own area that stated that David Belinski, he even said it to the public press that he had planned to have 1,000 birds by 2021, right? Like, so, or 2020, that's what it was, 2020, 1,000 birds by 2020 and 10,000 birds by 2030. So he, with no facility. And even in that public article, okay, he even stated this, that they had no money for an abattoir. They had no money for a processing facility. And right now they needed like $3 million, and they were looking for investors to fund a processing facility so that they can process the birds. It even stated that in that public article. So when I seen that, I'm like, and you start digging, well, yeah, it looks to me that it got out of control. He got in bed with some guy in the States, and they hijacked someone else's research, tried to run with it, do the thing, and make it their own with their own little new companies, and deceived everybody. Really, is what happened. And then when it came down, when the birds got infected, which they did not report to the CFIA, by the way, folks, they didn't report it to the CFIA. It was a neighbor who did. And the protocol is this: is if your bird tests positive for being sick, you are supposed to report it. Okay, that's just that, or else you get fined. And this is what happens, right? So. And then ever since, like even the CFIA, when they said that they were enabling the stomp out policy, then it all became about the research and stuff. But still, to the end of this day, there's absolutely zero research information from any study that they claim they were doing at all, anywhere, even in the databases, anywhere. And if there was, Tsukamoto would have published it if he was working with them, right? Like, come on, let's be real here. There's there's nothing. It's just, I think it's a lie.
Well, I wouldn't go that far based on the information that I've seen, the court documents, the testimony, the interviews.
Well, could it be that they perjured?
But I think that you are
correct. Pellick's the neurologist for
one. You're correct in this sense. They don't have any scientific documentation because they weren't doing the research. All they were doing is they were a production facility for the eggs. They were injecting the birds and then selling the eggs to these facilities, whether it was, well, they said that they were sending them over to Japan. And the reason I believe that that is the case, not only because of the court documents and the testimony under oath in court, but also because I did speak to another farm that received birds from Universal Ostrich Farm, and they did provide, that was part of their business model, was supplying ostriches to other farms across Canada, to the extent that about 20% of all ostriches in this country have ties or originated from that farm, Universal Ostrich Farm, which
That's
is
what they
the
claim.
biggest, it is the biggest ostrich farm in Canada. It's not just some rinky-dink small little
No,
family farm.
but Rick, though, that farm was never that size a couple years ago.
Okay, but the point is, I spoke to the person at the other farm who took these birds and was presented with what was referred to as a business opportunity, because they too were injecting the birds with antigens. And this is a person who's not on anybody's radar. Those birds were later returned back to UOF, but they had the birds for a while. And so I've got the interview. So they're not the only ones at UOF.
They were saying
they were injecting these things.
So other farms are claiming that they were injecting their birds? Really?
And then this person became very upset, and it was obvious they were concerned because they were aware of all the controversy and everything going on with Universal Ostrich Farm, and because they were tied to it, they weren't sure where they were going to end up.
This is what makes no sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So Tsukamoto started his research in late December and completed it within a month, 45 days. It didn't take long for him to complete his research. Then he published it at the end of February. And then all this transpired from like a couple months after. And all of a sudden, like, how did this? There's just no way. Like, there's no way that they would have got approval from the governments to move stuff over like this. Like, so I think that
because they weren't used. They had no permits. They weren't doing anything by the book there, and they were flying under the radar.
So would that mean that everybody involved should be? Because think about it. If that's the case, Rick, then that means Tsukamoto could be removed from his position, because that's absolute corruption right there.
Except he's in Japan. He's not subject to Canadian law.
No, but
and whatever his involvement is, and there are also documents that show they had pre-purchased. They purchased a bunch of antigens that we're told are actually still at the farm. They still have these things. And there was about,
I didn't see that.
There were some documents showing that they are in debt. I think it's to the tune of about, I have to be careful here. I have to say that I'm not sure of the amount. I can't remember. Could be $500,000 worth of antigens, which they pre-purchased. And then this bird flu thing came along. No wonder they are fit to be tied, because the birds are going to be destroyed. They needed those birds alive in order to inject the antigens to produce the antibodies to get their money back. They've pre-purchased this stuff. They had to pay for it up front. And there are documents now, unless those documents were forged and published online in a fraudulent way.
It's not in the court documents.
I wasn't the only one who cited these things. I think.
No, go look at.
I'd have to go find them again.
Go look at I read the court documents, especially David's affidavit, a submission of evidence. Okay. So he submitted a bunch of exhibits.
And it was also,
I went over all of it.
That debt was cited also in some mainstream media reports.
Yeah, I heard that.
Might have been Global News.
Yeah, no, CTV. You are correct. CTV did publish an article about it.
Yeah.
Yes, but no, it wasn't in the court documents. The court documents doesn't even show any research. It just shows that they were presenting a business plan.
But the court case had nothing to, like, it didn't deal at all with the COVID side of it. It was all bird flu. But even there, it's even worse for them on that front, because I keep saying, if you say these birds have herd immunity to H5N1, show me the proof. If you say that you've been doing research that is extremely valuable and these birds warrant being studied, then show me your studies to back up your claims and this theory that these birds are
There's no
unique in
such
some way.
there's no
They
such
didn't
thing.
do any. They
There-
didn't do
okay.
any studies into bird flu.
Let me clarify something, and people could go research this online. I looked up the length of time that the bird flu lasts in an ostrich. Okay. There's no such thing as herd immunity amongst ostriches with the avian flu. What happens is it carries within an ostrich for years.
Right.
And spreads. They don't die like other birds do. That's the
Exactly.
difference. So yes, it may seem that the ostriches are healthy and stuff, okay, but what people don't know is if they were tested, they could still be looking like they're healthy, and it can be in their system
right.
for and keep spreading to other birds and
That's
stuff.
right.
I read the science behind that. So I'm just
100%.
saying, like, if we're going to talk about the truth, let's talk about a little bit about the real science behind
And
that.
that's for that kind of ostrich, all of it, any of them. There was nothing unique in that regard for those ostriches. The number of birds that died was about average based on an infection of a flock of that size. They had 69 birds. That's not a small number, by the way. 69 birds dying. That's serious stuff.
Yeah.
At the time.
It is.
But it's not unusual for the rest of a flock to survive it because they're much bigger than a chicken. They are a tougher bird. The virus doesn't affect them in exactly the same way. But that too, Jason, is why I created this. I said, why don't we study the alligators then down at Alligator Alcatraz? Because they become infected with bird flu too, but they don't die at all.
Yeah.
So
they're carriers.
Right, they just carry the stuff. So let's study alligators. It's the same argument.
Well, monkeys. Look at monkeys in the Amazon and stuff that have those Ebola or whatever, right?
Yeah.
What about HIV? It was the same thing.
Exactly. So I mean, this argument that they're making, it's unbelievable. I can't believe how many people just bought it hook, line, and sinker, and it just really doesn't carry any scientific merit.
No, you know what, like, look, I understand, like, this is where I'm a little bit compassionate, right? So on one hand, I spent time on a farm with farmers before. I worked on a farm. So I know if a farmer lost everything, how it would probably feel like. And I understand that. I understand that the CFIA was following a policy that was necessary. And I mean, and how I look at it is this: are we going to favor one farm over another? I mean, and so maybe we should look at how things are going and see if there is a problem and look at that and fix it. But the way things have been done, the way things transpired, and then, as an activist, just coming from an activist point of view, okay, when I go out and protest for something I believe in, I make sure that I try to be as informative as possible so I can deliver the truth to the people as to why I'm protesting and why it's important to support the protest that I'm doing, right? That's just what you do. And what I seen was we had individuals from Ontario and the East Coast show up to the farm, and I think that's been part of the influence of what's been going on with Katie, right? And there's just been back and forth change of stories continuously. That's another thing. And that's just public. I mean, I've seen so many videos. I mean, look at the last one that she did. I mean, so I don't know. My thing is just about truth. And so many people, you're right, got hooked up on it, and people talk about psyops and propaganda and conditioning. Well, people fell for this, regardless of what, but you fell for it. And while this was going on, there was a farmer here in Alberta who lost 44,000 chickens. And he spent a couple of days in jail, right? How about the 2,000 bovine that got slaughtered for the same reason? So I mean, nobody stood up for the farmers who
different
actually
disease, but
different disease. But the thing is, at the end of the day, these are actual farmers. Yeah, and and the thing is these are actual farmers who are feeding us. Mm-hmm. And that's where I say, okay, well, what would be the more importance for me to stand up for? I would stand up for the farmers who are growing food for us, that are delivering it from right to our table. And that's, and if we cut off that supply and then we're all screwed, right? So
but and in terms of accuracy though, because accuracy leads to truth, poultry operations generally don't get destroyed by this stamping out policy because there's enough compensation there for these
Oh yes,
operations to
let's
rebuild.
talk about let's talk about the compensation.
Because they'll give as much as like $12 a bird for a chicken. And when I go to the supermarket to buy a hot chicken, that's prepared, it's like $8.95. So $12 a bird, that's really kind of above market value being paid to the farmer. Plus, they'll also kick in money to compensate for the costs to the farm of culling the birds themselves and clean up.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, let's talk about that so the public understands it, because nobody's really talking about that compensation.
Yeah.
Now, yes, the CFIA has a stomp out policy, but what people don't know is that the CFIA and the government gives full compensation to the farm for the stomp out. They pay them at above market value for their animals. They pay them per hour basis on how much time it takes to do the cleanup within a specific time frame that they have. And I mean, they pay for everything. So they're getting compensated 100% plus some, so that they can restart their farm with a clean farm.
Right.
So nobody's talking about that.
There's another aspect to that too that actually is a benefit to the farm for following the CFIA guidelines, because if you proceed with a cull in that manner, it reduces the amount of time that your operation is down. If you just let the virus run its course, your operation could be down like for a month or 2 months or for an extended period of time while the disease runs its course, and the birds die off a little bit at a time, suffering the entire time, swelled heads, swelled brains, bleeding out internally, suffocating as fluid builds up in their respiratory system. The birds suffer and then die over an extended period of time. The farms then have to, over time, wait for the birds to die. Then they have to clean up, disinfect, and that can take many, many weeks, if not months. By culling, the farm can go in, cull all the birds, move them all out, sanitize right away, and let things lay fallow for a short period of time, and then repopulate and get back into operation quickly, so that there's a minimum amount of damage done financially to the farm operation.
Yeah. I have a farmer. I emailed you the link. Okay. She did a video, and this is a farmer who went through a culling with the CFIA, and she explains everything.
Okay. And so you emailed that to me?
Yeah, I emailed that to you. And this is an actual farmer who went through a culling, and she gives a perspective that I think people would need to listen to.
I don't know if I'm getting it here, Jason.
Give me a second. Yeah, it says you've seen this.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it. I have so much email coming in, even on the fly, that it kind of got buried, but I have it here now. And it's coming up. And in fact, yes, I ran this clip the other day, but we'll run it again right now. And very valid points with this lady.
Yeah.
Here we go. Just takes me a second to get it all clicked. Here we go.
So I figured that I would weigh in on the BC Ostrich Farm story, because I actually went through the entire avian influenza process with the CFIA back in 2022. Now, my barn was infected. I watched every single one of my birds die horrible deaths. It took 7 days to completely wipe out my flock. So I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective when it comes to this, as someone who's actually been through the entire avian influenza journey from start to finish dealing with the CFIA. Some things that I'm seeing come out of this directly from the owner of the farm by watching interviews and then reading CFIA reports, because all the reports are online. You can actually even go look up my farm report. It's all there. Every single case of avian influenza is posted on the CFIA website by farm. So first thing that I noticed was the biggest red flag was she didn't actually report that her birds were sick to the CFIA. Her neighbor had to report these sick birds. So initially, right off the get-go, she was trying to hide the fact that her birds had avian influenza. When she has said that she was denied independent testing, or that there was no testing whatsoever done, if you go look at the CFIA reports, you can actually see that 2 birds were in fact tested and they came back positive. Now, it doesn't matter if 1 bird is tested or the entire flock is tested. In my case, it was the entire flock. But 1 positive case condemns your entire flock. It doesn't matter. It is such a contagious virus, and it can live on organic material for so incredibly long that if you don't do something to stop it right in its tracks, it's just going to spread like wildfire. Now, when she says that she was denied independent testing and threatened with jail time over this, I again say, nope, that's not how it works, because I was told that I could independently test my flock for avian influenza so long as it was in conjunction with the CFIA and my vets followed proper avian influenza biosecurity protocols. So to say that she was denied testing and then that none of her flock was ever tested is a big pile of crap. When she says she was denied compensation for her birds, again, you go back and read the reports. That is not, in fact, the case. She actually refused compensation for her flock. Now, she was offered $3,000 per bird, which is fair market value. I was offered fair market value for all of my birds, and I was compensated very fairly for them. You'll even get compensated for your hours you put in to clean up and do all of your disposal and your disinfection. You will be reimbursed for your bales, your feed, everything. Everything that has to be destroyed, because avian influenza can live on organic material for so long, it essentially all has to be destroyed just to protect all the wildlife around you and other farms who are raising birds. She was not doing her disposal properly when her birds did die, from reports stating that she had birds that were just left all over her yard with tarps thrown on them so that any wild bird could come in and nibble on these dead ostriches who clearly died from avian influenza and then go spread it to the flocks. Now, the thing with avian influenza is all it takes is a little piece of infected fecal matter, saliva, or snot, infects one bird, that bird goes to the entire flock of migratory birds like Canadian geese flying, and the entire flock will be sick and dead and suffer unbelievably horrible deaths. That is why it is so important to contain this virus. That is why there is a stamp out policy. You cannot allow this virus to create herd immunity and all of that sort of thing. It is just so incredibly dangerous. Now, another thing that she stated was that the CFIA doesn't actually come in and cull your animals. Again, not exactly true. Now, when the cull team came to my property to put down whatever birds were left, and there wasn't a lot left, but still they brought in the culling team. And they brought them in. They also brought in porta potties and a dumpster for them to put some of their PPE and all of that. Now, they set up separate zones, because I have seen arguments of people saying, well, the CFIA wasn't even putting on their PPE when they come in. Well, they're not going to. They're going to have that yard set up in a red zone, a yellow zone, and a green zone. Green zone meaning no danger. Yellow zone is warm. Okay, we need to start putting the PPE on. Red zone, full PPE. So when they would come back from wherever the red zone was, all PPE must be taken off, removed, and then they bag everything up. They seal those bags, and then once they hit that yellow zone, everything that was under the PPE is going to be sprayed with a disinfectant. But they don't bring in these hired hitman thugs to come and put your birds down. No, they bring in actual members of the CFIA as part of their cull team. They come in and they will put these birds down in the most humane way possible. Now, in our case, it was a specialized tool that just came in and broke their necks. They felt nothing. It was instant. Do not misunderstand me here when I say all this in kind of a way that I'm not breaking down emotionally. It has been 3 years for me. It was the hardest thing I have ever been through. I loved my birds. I really, truly did. Every single one of my birds had a name. Every single one of my birds was either hatched in an incubator in my house and then lived in breeder boxes in my house, or they were hatched by hens that I had, again, hatched in my house. Every bird had a personality. Every bird meant a lot to me. But you know what? I did the responsible thing. I contacted my Alberta provincial vet, who then contacted the CFIA, and then I dealt with the process in a responsible manner, because I did not need this virus spreading to all of my neighboring farms and to the wild flocks. Now, you see these protesters that are all in there. These are massive groups, and they are coming into contact with infected material. But when they leave, are they disinfecting everything that they've had on? And the disinfection mixture has to be 1 part bleach, 4 parts water. Are they doing all this? Are they using Virkon to disinfect their shoes? No, they're not. They're going back home and they're spreading avian influenza just all around, just sprinkles of this horrid virus. So it's incredibly irresponsible. Another thing with the protest group that I really don't agree with is the neighbor has been beaten up. They've burnt a flag of the Canadian flag, threw it on the fire, and then they're threatening the RCMP on a daily basis. This is not how you deal with this. This is a horrendous virus that does need to be stamped out and contained. My opinion, those birds should have been culled months ago. Months ago. I don't understand how this has been allowed to drag on for as long as it has. This farmer is the most irresponsible producer I have ever come across or seen in my life. And for her to say that, well, my birds never entered the food chain, what does it matter? Well, my birds never entered the food chain either, but you know what? They were still a risk to the sparrows and the magpies that would fly in and then go come into contact with migratory birds. You're not doing the responsible thing, and you're not doing your birds any favors here. You are hurting the industry. You are hurting your neighboring farms. You are hurting your neighboring community, and it just is horrible. Your birds did enter the food chain. You were selling meat, eggs, and oils from them at one point, but your website's all been deleted. Now, I think these birds need to be put down as soon as possible. I think proper biosecurity and containment needs to be put in place instantly. And I honestly believe that the owners of this ostrich farm should have the legal book thrown at them.
Yeah, she was pretty upset there. Well, I mean, I talked to other farmers and they've said the same thing, because, and the reason why I talked to the other farmers was because they were all concerned about this farmers protest on November 22nd, right? And they're like, hey, Jay, are you part of that? And I'm like, no, I'm not actually, no, because I got other things I'm doing. And so, I talked to them and they all agree. They're like, if when this virus comes on their farms, they will destroy what they have to because of how it spreads. And all these farmers know this. So, when you look at the sentiment by other farmers about this is what I've pretty much everybody said this to me. One, where they're delivering a product to the food supply that will feed Canadians. Okay, that was the number one thing they said versus what they were doing. So I understand that sentiment from the farmers I talked to. And the other thing is following the policy. So they've had in the past, some of these farmers had entire flocks of birds destroyed because of the policy. But again, it spreads, they have to clean it out and they're compensated to restart. So they restarted. Yeah, it takes a little bit, but they get back on track and, they're back on the thing. Yes, it does affect them a little bit. But at the end of the day, these are farmers who are obviously saying that, yes, in fact, what they were doing out there was irresponsible. One farmer in particular out of Saskatchewan told me that he's like, if you actually look at how they were breeding those birds and the capacity and how many birds they were growing, right? And somebody he showed me, he's like, go read on how the incubation period time is to grow an ostrich. He's like, you can grow hundreds of ostriches really quick. He's like, so when you look at the incubation period of the amount of ostriches they had up to present to where it was in 2017-18, it's actually on track to where they were trying to push for 1,000, right? Mm-hmm. So, now when you grow animals, again, I can refer you to some ostrich farms in Ontario that have a similar setup as they do here in Edgewood. In Ontario, they have about 200 plus birds. They have an abattoir. It's set up completely different. And I spoke to the two young owners. They're about 38, 39 years old each. And again, same almost story as Belinski. They went to Africa and they got a strain of a breed of a breed of an ostrich for meat production and oil and using the feathers, and they processed the entire bird. So I asked them if they knew anything about the Belinskis out here, and they're like, no. Because the reason why I started asking other farmers if they knew anything was the claim about the 20% species or the 20% breed species that came just from that farm in BC for Canada entirely, which is incorrect. Maybe for BC, because they were selling birds, and how they were doing it was they would sell the bird to the farmer, and then the farmer would generate birds, and they would buy back at a certain price per head. And that's why they're in court right now for that. Right. So when you do mass breeding with no production facility, no abattoir, no nothing, I don't know. And especially if you don't have proper biosecurity, eventually at some point your water's going to be contaminated somewhere. If you're not picking up the feces and properly getting rid of the feces, apparently that wasn't being followed at all. So I've heard it from other farmers that live locally, right? So it's important to listen to what's going on too from other people, not just one perspective, because the neighbors are not too happy right now, and the sentiments even here in Alberta.
The community's not too happy out there. The town of Edgewood. It's just been very disruptive to the entire community, and a lot of people there they have been very concerned about what's been going on out at that farm. Not the least of which is the violence and the assault on the elderly lady with throwing the gasoline on the woman and on the home. Also, within the last week, we saw RCMP issue a warning to Blake Roberts, I think his last name is, because of his posts online. He's the guy who burned the Canadian flag, and he's been, an integral part of everything going on out at the farm. Warned about doxing people online, and also concerns from the RCMP about some of the protesters or activists out there threatening to gang rape somebody.
What?
Oh, yes. I've got the recording. I don't have it queued up, but I have that. I mean, I've got so much stuff. In fact, I've got a whistleblower I've got clips of that person lined up here. I wasn't sure if we would run them tonight. I've never even put this stuff out. I've got so much stuff.
Put it up, buddy. I want to see this shit.
Well, we'll get to that. Sure.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
can
no,
run
no,
some
but
of that.
no. My thing is, okay,
Just,
listen.
yeah.
I barked at the Palestinian protesters about burning our flag. Okay.
Yep.
I don't think it's right that we have a foreign country come in and prop their flag over ours and then burn ours as an insult. I'm totally against that. And when I seen that happen over at the farm, okay, and I'm like, no, like, so I called it out. Me and Berta Proud Dad, we both called it out. And people gave me flack about it. Oh, well, no. You're not going to play with, I'm fair. I don't give a shit who you are. You're not going to burn our flag. I don't care how pissed off you are, because I'm going to say this. When we did the convoy or protested, did you see us burning our flags, even how pissed off we were at the government? No. We had it upside down as a sign of distress. That's it.
A few things came up in that video that reminded me of a few things too. This, first of all, the farm, Universal Ostrich Farm, externalized their risk. So when they're talking about property rights, yes, it's true that this is a property rights issue, but people have to understand that this farm, because they had an open air facility, an open air research facility at that point, they were externalizing the risk. They're saying, well, our birds don't fly, therefore there's no risk. Not true, because the birds became infected. Wildlife was interacting with the ostriches, both infecting the ostriches and the ostriches then being able to infect wildlife, including ducks, excuse me, which can fly up to 3,000 miles.
Did anybody
so you can't
test
tell
the
me
pond?
that there's no risk there.
No.
There absolutely is.
Anybody test the pond water?
Right. That's another thing. And that's what the whistleblower is also going to address in a couple of these clips. Funny you should mention that. Also, you were talking about populating the flock. I was hoping Mr. Belinski would join us tonight, because I have a standing question, which I have presented on this program many times, never an answer provided. And that is, where are the babies? They've asserted that the ostriches that died, the 69, were all new birds introduced to the flock. This is a farm that, as part of its business model, was supposed to be supplying ostriches to other farms, and they did. So if that's the case, why did they have to bring in new birds from an external source? Why were they not just breeding more birds on site? I don't understand. Like, there's no good answer that I can come up with that makes this farm look good, but you've got issues with inventory control. They can't track the numbers of birds. I've not seen any baby birds out there, like, ever, in the entire time that this has been going on. No baby chicks, lots of eggs, but no babies, no baby birds. Where are the babies? What happened between 400, 398, and then we ended up with 313 actually being confirmed as culled by the CFIA? Why all this accounting issue? If you're a legitimate farm, you're counting every bird. If they're worth $3,000 a piece, you don't think that they're counting $3,000 a head? I certainly would be, but they were like, oh, well, it's somewhere between 300 and 400. Karen Esperson stood up on a PA system and said exactly those words, because they couldn't even apparently account for their birds. And if you're running any kind of a research facility, you need to account for every variable, especially any deaths.
Hold on. Somebody just messaged me to answer your question.
Sure.
Give me a second.
I'm eager to find out what my question about the babies.
Yeah. And
where are the babies?
It's from a farmer that's local.
Okay. And the answer is, drum roll, please. I've been asking this for weeks.
I'm waiting.
I hope it's a good answer. Like, I hope that it clears it all up for me.
And I promised this person I would never reveal their identity. So they're doing this anonymously because they're fed up. Okay. Okay. Sorry. She's not a farmer, but they're a local that work with everybody. Okay. So satellite farms raise the birds, and the birds were sold back to the farm. So satellite farms would be the ones that have Okay, so she said I can say who it is. So her name is Angie Clowry. Okay. And she states that satellite farms raise the birds, so that's where the hatchlings would be. The birds were sold to the farm at $3.50 a pound, and they were a year old.
So they had other farms involved, and they were involved in breeding, and the other farms supplied UOF with baby birds.
Yeah, so according to this, the satellite farms are the ones who raise the birds, and then the birds were sold back to the farm. Give me a second.
Why? That seems like a very strange
I
operation.
I know that the farm was growing some. So apparently the 69 birds that died were other farmers' birds, allegedly.
Yeah.
Because there was a bunch of farmers working with that farm. Yeah.
How many ostrich farms are there around there? There aren't that many. So how many satellite operations are where they're out there breeding these birds? Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, what I can do is get you in contact with that person.
Sure. I'd love to know exactly. I know of the one farm, but it was about 100 miles away. And I talked to them.
Well, there was a couple farms I found that they did sell birds to, but like there's 3 farms suing them right now because they reneged on their deal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently there's two other satellite farmers. They haven't come forward, but she knows who they are. You can talk to her too. I'll give you her contact after, Rick.
Okay.
But she says that there's 2 satellite farmers who struggled for 2 years now, and that it was other farms who raised the birds, and then they were sold back to UOF, and it was sold at a per pound rate of $3.50 per pound. So it wasn't just like what they're stating it is. So they had other farmers working collectively to mass to mass produce birds. That's what this whole thing was. It was a breeding. You know how they have puppy mills? This is an ostrich mill.
Yeah.
Straight up, it's an ostrich mill.
Yeah. But I just I don't understand why they didn't have some babies there, because they were set up for whatever they were doing.
Well, I have a video from 2018 that shows they had hatchlings.
Oh, sure. In 2018.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about just in the last year when all this has been going on. I'm not seeing any babies. I don't see any videos of babies. No baby birds. Now, so there are several possibilities. One, they didn't want those baby birds culled, so they smuggled them out illegally and took them to another location, to other farms, to get them off the facility, off the site, because they didn't want them killed. 2, what other possibility could there be? No baby birds because they all died because they became infected or something. Something killed them. 3, third possibility, the birds were sterile because they'd been injected so much that the eggs weren't producing anything anymore. I don't know. These are just theories. I have no idea.
I think one good theory would be that they gave the hatchlings away to other farms.
Yeah, which would be in contravention of the CFIA order.
Well,
if that happened after the bird flu outbreak, because they weren't supposed to move anything off site. No eggs, no birds, and baby birds would be birds. So they weren't supposed to move them. Again, and I'm just not seeing any birds.
I never even thought to even think about the hatchlings.
Yeah, and of all the birds, those would be the ones that they would be focused on the most with their videos and all their live streams, because those would tug at the heartstrings the most. And that's been the tactic they've used, the strategy all along. Well, after bringing Jeff Gaudry online as their media coordinator and using Jim Kerr as one of their front men, and putting Katie out front as the farm spokesperson. It was all coordinated, all a choreographed information warfare campaign. And they would have focused intensely on the baby birds. There were no babies out there. They'd be showing those cute little baby birds. The CFIA can't kill the baby birds. Of course they would have done that, but they didn't, because there are none. There were none there. Where did they go?
Okay.
Well, were they there at all? And I wanted to ask Dave, maybe there's a simple explanation. I just can't come up with a scenario.
So how they were doing is they were selling an investment plan to the other farms, like basically an investment to the other farms,
right. Which is what I talked about with the other farm. Yeah.
So the other farms say that the babies do die easily. The satellite farms were sold birds for $14,000. They were given a dream to make 150 grand on a return, which is stated in their pamphlet that was given to them on this investment. And they stated that the reason for the investment would generate 10 to 100 eggs per year, and the birds were sold back to the farm when they're a year old. Yes, I remember reading that. That they would produce the birds, and once the birds got to a year old, the farm was supposed to buy it back. And that's the reason why those other 3 farms are going after Belinski right now in that court case. Yeah.
Nevertheless,
yeah.
You see eggs all over the place at the farm. You see the birds copulating, which they weren't actually supposed to be allowing them to do.
Yeah, and they were for slaughter.
Ostrich porn.
Yeah, so it was for slaughter too. So
yeah. So where were these birds in the past? Where were the babies in the past year? There just were none, like zero. Didn't ever see one. And so I just want to know. And I understand even if they were buying birds back, or there was some business arrangement.
No, the farms would generate the hatchlings. That's what I'm getting told. So the other farms, they're generating the hatchlings. They get them to a year old, and then they sell them to UOF. That's what's been going on. And in UOF, all those birds are supposed to be paid back compensated to those farms, and they haven't paid those farms for making the birds. So the whole thing was they were basically getting the other farms to generate the ostrich farms to age.
You mentioned the farm out in Ontario. Yeah. Was that ostrich land, Ontario?
Yeah, it was the people from they were Norwegian or
I don't know them, but I did note that Jim Kerr paid them a visit, and Jim Kerr was out there shooting video of baby birds. And in said video, Jim Kerr referred to, what was the exact phrase? Your family out in Edgewood, or your relatives. He referred to them as like family. So that made me wonder, did Jim Kerr, or did like these birds?
No, Jim, you have to remember.
I don't know what the hell that was. That was weird.
No. We got to remember, man, some of these actors are also trying to do whatever it takes to push a narrative.
Sure.
Right. And that I've been aware of. I know, man, it's not cool. And that's the reason why I'm just trying to tell people, look, I dived into this to fact check it, because I see a lot of my friends who are like falling for this whole thing. And for what, guys? Like, we have a country that's falling apart. It's more important things, and I get it. Yeah. But you want to follow that, and that's not going to do anything. It's a waste of time.
That's why I wanted Dave Belinski on here tonight. Like, I didn't want to attack him or anything, but like, I've got some questions. People have questions, but they're winning in the court of public opinion because it has been an extremely effective information warfare campaign. They like propaganda, using emotion. What we're doing here tonight will not resonate with people the way that Save Our Ostriches will resonate, or we're going to avenge the ostriches. Donate now to Rebel News. Like, going to avenge the ostriches? Because people are upset.
When it comes to the money, this is what I thought was pretty interesting. So when I was talking to David on the phone, I asked him about the fundraisers, because he said to me that they needed money for legal costs and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, why do you need money? I said, you guys just raised almost $450,000 with all these fundraisers. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, really? You don't know about these? So I sent him all the links, and I showed him. I'm like, there's one for 130,000. There's another one for 180,000. There's another one for 80. You know what I mean? I kept going on about it. And so apparently he's telling me that he didn't know anything about that.
Everybody's cashing in on it.
Like,
everybody out there in one way or another, especially the influencers.
That's $500,000, man.
Yeah. $500,000. Yeah. And in some respects, this is their new business model, because now Katie is a freedom hero. The farm is martyred. Every bird is martyred. Katie is a martyr within the this circuit or whatever. She's already been asked to go down, and she was part of the conference in the U.S. where she was a guest speaker. So she's on the speakers tour now, right? And so they're putting her on a pedestal. So she's got a whole new career, and backed up by this billionaire U.S. businessman out of New York, John Katsimatidis, who's stuck his nose in there. You've got the Trump administration with Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. weighing in and, becoming involved and causing more disruption.
Well, there's been...
And Katsimatidis has said that he would back up their legal costs. So I wouldn't worry about those folks too much, because they're covered.
When it comes to some of these so-called on the U.S. side, all right, so Dr. Oz offered to, right, take the birds and move them over to the U.S.
Right.
Okay, so now, listen though, when the offer was made, the farm refused it.
Right.
Okay.
Of course.
Now, when it comes to our U.S. counterpart in New York, who is partly, people are making claims that he's funding the farm. I don't believe he's funding the farm.
Well, he said he was.
I think he's going to pay for he's going to pay for their legal fees.
Yes, he said he would do that.
Yeah. But as in terms of this money thing, like, I mean, I looked into see how many fundraiser links I could find on the internet that involved with the Ostrich Farm, and I was blown away. How many people are profiteering off of it?
Yeah. Well, the whistleblower, though, Jason, that I spoke to, also identified another billionaire who has been pumping money into that farm on the U.S. side.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have a clip of that portion queued up here tonight, but there's definite U.S. involvement, and definite, involvement from very wealthy U.S. business interests. So this is not just what it appears to be on the surface.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Because you know what, though? I think that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that's happened in this. And I think people tried to jump on the hype train and quickly realized, because, like, there's this claim where we've had these celebrities, and it's on a hype train. That's what you look at it. Like, it's a hype on the grapevines. So some of these guys will jump on it, and next thing you know, they find out about it, and they haven't said shit about it since. Nothing.
And another thing that came up in that video we ran of that other chicken farmer lady, she mentioned that she named all of her birds, just as they named all the birds out at the farm at Universal Ostrich Farm. The whistleblower told me a story that she was witness to of Drea from Rebel News after the one bird was shot and murdered in the darkness of night by a drone. After that incident was made public, or while that was happening, Drea consulted with the farm owners, Katie and Karen, and they sat there and decided they had to come up with a name. The bird didn't already have a name. They named the bird after it was dead. This is what this whistleblower told me in this recorded conversation. So I can verify that this was said to me from a witness. They made up the name after, because, as Drea put it, we need to come up with a name for the bird, because they know that they were trying to personify the birds, which they did, give them human elements, make people care for them. They had to give them names like pets so that people would feel for them.
Yeah, it's the whole psychological propaganda machine.
That's where you lose me as a newsman, as a journalist, just as someone who wants truth. That's emotion. That's manipulation. That's not truth. And then to lie to people and say they have names for all 400 or 313 or 297 or 507, like however many you've got, because you can't count. You don't even know. This is bullshit. They didn't have names for all those birds. They were taking donations to name the birds, which should tell you something right there, that They didn't have names for the birds. They were naming birds after some of the protesters.
Well, here I'm gonna.
including Colin Big Bear.
I know. Here's the biggest oxymoron of this whole thing. All these people who showed up as protesters were against lockdowns, COVID vaccines, the mandates. They were totally against that. That's why they were with us in Ottawa. They were with us before Ottawa. What I find interesting is this whole thing is about a COVID vaccine, or a COVID vaccine that never had any research. Right. So in one sense, the hypocrisy of this all is, are you going to say that we're going to stand up for the whole cake? Like, you can't say that you're out there protesting against mandates and against COVID and saying that the virus is fake and the jabs are 5G and all this stuff, and then go support a farm that's producing it.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
That's just the reality of it. And people don't like when I say that, but that is the reality of it, folks. Yeah. Like, does that make any sense to anybody? Like, I wouldn't go support the farm if I found out, hey man, they were making a vaccine for COVID. I'd be like, yeah, okay, another Pfizer shot.
What else would you use? Like, what else would you use the antibodies for? They stated that it was originally to develop a vaccine, not an mRNA vaccine, but a conventional kind of vaccine, if it's even feasible. But they didn't have any real research out there to back any of that up. With regard to the bird flu, yeah, there was some stuff of some kind going on with COVID, but not bird flu. That's just a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
At the end of it all, right?
Didn't Katie Pisitny state somewhere that they tested for H5N1 or something, like a human crossover? Some of them at the farm did, and they're like, "Oh, we got it." I don't know if that's true.
They've made all kinds of claims that she stated in one video that the antibodies from the ostriches could cure measles. Like, what? Where's your research on that? They didn't do any research into measles.
No, it's never done that. The only research I've seen on any kind of respiratory illness was they did inject bronchitis strain, and this is Dr. Tsukamoto's research, by the way, which was his last research study with this type of stuff, and he did it for bronchitis to create a vaccine for it. It was the same thing with COVID, right? He took a strain of COVID, injected his own birds in Japan to create that nasal spray that was part of that clinic in Japan, Wakataka Clinic. Anyways, that clinic, I mean, you can look it up. They were the only clinic that Tsukamoto was working to see how it would affect human beings when they were developing this vaccine from the ostriches. And it was a nasal spray, and you had to spray in your nose 5 to 6 times a day.
Yeah. And right? The stuff that they were doing out of that farm with regard to the antibodies and the claims they're making, it's just part of the natural, what do you call it? The homeopathic natural remedies market, right? And you can go on any website, any like Amazon, and buy these same kinds of products. Hair growth tonic, super hair growth oil with ostrich oil, right? And what they're really doing is selling you snake oil. Like it probably doesn't do anything. And that's a lot of what Dr. Tsukamoto was even engaged in. Even his research is dubious, didn't really meet a lot of the standards. That's why they couldn't get Health Canada or other federal government approvals in Canada to produce the antibody infused masks that they wanted to produce. We ran the interview with the former financial officer with Breathe Medical out in British Columbia.
Oh, you actually interviewed that guy?
Oh yeah, I've run it twice on the program.
Oh, really? Yeah, because I was going to contact him because I read the document in the court file about the procurement for masks, and my understanding is the farm was going to buy masks from.
They wanted to engage in a contract to produce these things. Let me. I've got the interview. I can run it again.
Yeah, because he was one that I haven't contacted yet, and I looked at the agreement, and my understanding from the agreement it looked like the farm was going to procure a contract so that they
had an
develop,
intent to purchase.
yeah, an intent to purchase from
Yeah.
the company for masks and stuff.
Let me see if I can find it.
Somebody called me, Jason, you're not a freedom fighter, man. You have no idea.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of accusations I've been getting to. Attack, because you don't want to say you hate ostriches.
We don't hate it. Well, we
I don't hate
man.
ostriches.
We're just like, my thing is, if you're going to go and ask people for support and donations in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay, then do it
truthful.
Yeah, be truthful and be honest.
Yeah.
Don't lie about it and say you're doing research that you're not doing.
Right.
That's all.
That's exactly right.
Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Sure. Let me see if I can find. I got to go back in time because it was quite a while ago, because we were digging into this stuff quite some time ago. So this was Justin Singh is his name. He's the chief financial officer, I believe that was his title, with Breathe Medical out of British Columbia. I have so much material. I have to find him. Ostrich stories. Where'd you go? It's got to be here. There we go. I've got him. Here's your interview. I believe this is it. I think this is the one.
Hello.
Hello. Who am I
Hello.
speaking? Hello. Hi there.
Hi. How's it going? Who's this?
My name is Rick Walker. I'm out in Ontario. Is this Breathe Medical Manufacturing?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Breathe Medical Manufacturing. Wow, that's been out of business for a while.
Oh, they're not in business anymore.
No, not even at all. Yeah.
Oh,
Are you looking for someone there?
Well, I'm looking for. I understand they were manufacturing, I guess, medical masks with infused with ostrich antibodies.
No, yeah, I was part of that world at one point. Yeah, they talked about it at one point, but it never ever happened.
I see. Yeah, I'm a journalist out here in Ontario. I've been covering this Universal
This ostrich
Ostrich
thing here?
Farm thing. Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
weird.
I know about that.
Weird story.
It is a weird story. I actually know that farm. That was the farm we were going to use. Yeah.
Why didn't they do it? I guess probably because they didn't have like regulatory approvals in place and so on.
That's right. I can tell you exactly why. Like, it was COVID. They had never done it before. There was no Health Canada approval on anything that they were claiming at the time. There were some studies from overseas or something like that they were talking about. But ultimately, like, how safe do we all feel about spraying stuff on fabrics that are going to be on people's faces, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
it was,
Yeah. It seems very like a real stretch to me to make those kinds of claims. And it looked like the company, from everything I'm seeing, they were very focused on making sure they were in compliance with standards and approvals and producing a quality product.
Breathe,
Yes. Yeah.
the Ostrich Farm.
No, the Breathe.
It was-
Man,
yeah.
they've got like certifications
Yeah.
on like N95 masks and NIOSH respirators and so
Totally.
on. But anyway,
That's right. Yeah. We did all that stuff, and then we had to just shut her down, and the government didn't want to keep it going anymore. So it's been out of business
I see.
for at least a couple of years.
I see. I thought they were still in business because there was this letter of intent that was filed in court, and your letter of intent to purchase the antibodies, which I guess just never actually ended up happening.
That's right. Yeah. Never
Yeah.
ended up happening yet.
All right. Sorry, what was your name? Who am I speaking with, by the way? Because this number.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably still on the website. They were kind of getting it taken down. My name is Justin Singh. I was the the chief operating officer there, so oversaw the whole operation at one point.
I see.
But ultimately, the owners just couldn't get any deals to get to place with the government that they had stated that were going to be in place for 5 to 10 years. That never happened. So then we just had to shut it down.
I see.
Couldn't get any procurement outside of COVID.
The whole thing out there at that farm right now seems very strange to me. How did you guys get connected with the farm?
They showed up. they showed up at the factory claiming all of these things that could really help aid the fight against COVID. So they came to seek this out, which they were very close to the location-wise to where we were going to manufacture in Kelowna.
Yeah, but
so that I believe that farm's not very far away.
Yeah,
a couple hours.
But in the end, they just couldn't prove any of that because they just didn't have the proper studies.
Yeah, and Health Canada made it very well known to us that it would be stuck in research for a long time before we could ever get it approved to be used.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well,
pretty. Yeah. It's pretty aggressive of them to be claiming all those things without any Health Canada.
Well, for credit,
studies
I heard the one lady on another stream, and I did speak to her, Katie Pasitny, and she was on another show saying that you could prevent measles with ostrich antibodies, and I can't find even one study related to that.
No, we couldn't find much either, but they were just under the impression that these ostriches were able to fight off all different types of diseases and bacteria and viruses, and it had to do with their genetic makeup and antibodies that they carried. And I think there's a lot of assumptions to their theory, right? So it costs a lot of money and time to get those types of scientific studies done, right? So I don't know if you've ever met them. They're just kind of countryside farmers, right? So
yeah,
they're definitely far from being Harvard research students or any of that kind of stuff, right? So
yeah, I guess you've been kind of taking note of what's going on out there. It's seems very political to me more than scientific at this point.
You would think so when all the names that you're seeing are all involved all of a sudden, right? So
yes. Is there
an interesting thing?
Yeah. So as I follow this story along, is there any advice or direction you might give me to try to make sense of what's going on out there?
Oh, any advice? Nah, I don't know. It's just, you know the old theory, like it's very hard to convince people of something that they've just made real. I think the owners of the farm just truly believe in stuff that's not scientific, right? So
yeah, like they have a lot of people out there who believe viruses don't exist.
That's right. So there'd be more part of that. COVID is a this and COVID is a that kind of theory-based stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know. We would have been using ostrich antibodies many years ago if it really worked or was scientifically proven. Yes. Sure, everybody studied everything, right? So
yeah, exactly. Well,
like
listen,
a small little farm that had, I think at that time, like 10 or 15 ostriches.
They only had 10 or 15 ostriches at that time?
Yeah, there wasn't very many. There wasn't this 100 or 200 they got now or whatever they got.
Well, they say like 400. Well,
is it that many? Shoot.
That's what they say, but I don't see that many out there.
Yeah, we went to the farm. It was, well, maybe there was more than 15. Maybe there was less than 50, but there was no like Jurassic Park runaround of ostriches. Like there was not hundreds of them.
Well, that's the thing, though. Like there seems to be discrepancy or confusion over. Well, there just seems to be an accounting issue. Like they can't even really.
No.
How many?
I think that boils down to who you're dealing with as the ownership there, right? So.
Yeah, and the other issue is it just doesn't seem, as CFIA has pointed out in the court documents, they're not really running a facility that meets the standard for any kind of real research.
That's right. That's right. That's for sure.
And ultimately,
I don't even know if it's up to standard for any type of practice outside of just like, some type of, personal farm that they're running, right? Like, I don't know if it's certified for anything. So I don't know. Exactly I haven't been there since 2020, right? So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
2020.
Like I don't even think they can even retail or sell off those ostriches or do anything with anything. Though there's no certificates or licensing to do anything on that farm. But who knows? I just caught wind of it and I was like, oh shoot, I've been on that farm. I know those people.
So when they're sitting there saying these birds are worth, I think they're saying they have a value of 7,500. CFIA is offering to pay them like $3,000 a pop, but I don't see that they're even worth anything because they've been injected with these antigens that they say they've been getting from, well, multiple sources to research COVID. Plus, they've been infected with bird flu.
Yep.
How do you sell those for food at this point? You can't. I don't
You
know.
cannot.
Yeah, you can't.
Cannot do that. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, it's one of this again, right? The value is in what the market says, not what you think, right? So
Market says that's exactly right. And whether you can even sell them to anybody legally.
That's the biggest thing, right? Is if you do want to get some type of recoup on investment, you got to have all the right things in place to sell it. You can't just go sell it. You can't put them on Facebook Marketplace and sell them, right? So,
well, they do.
They're live animals.
They do.
Well, I know they do. That's why I said that. Yeah, they're interesting people, right? So
I didn't know that.
They probably don't live by the law very closely, so
no rules out there. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's why they live way out in the sticks there, right? So
yeah, that's right.
Not many people pop in there, and not many people bother them there, so they can probably do what they want with lots of time. And I don't know where they have their money from. They don't strike me as very wealthy people.
Well, there's some questions about the farm ownership, large debts that they've accumulated,
right?
Legal disputes over the land ownership or the property ownership.
Yeah,
which just adds new layers of intrigue to this mystery.
Yeah, that's not surprising, that's for sure.
Well, yeah. So I'm with Maverick News, is the my news platform, and as I say, I'm a journalist out here in Ontario, but I've been following this story out of the Ostrich Farm. I'm surprised that other media has not, taken note of the COVID research, the real issues surrounding all of this. It's just save the birds, save the birds. It's become an emotional thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's what you got to tack onto, right? Is what's going to actually grab some interest. No one's going to care about the other stuff.
Yes, that's exactly right. But when you're dealing with the bird flu and the spread of the disease and other chicken operations, I think that they're putting other farms in jeopardy while they're claiming to be out there fighting for farmers, but it seems to be upside down.
Yeah, it's strange. Well, all the best to you.
Well, thank you very much for your comments and your information. I really, really appreciate you providing some clarity on this for me today. Very, very helpful.
No problem. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Now, just a couple of points.
Wow.
See, the farm, he's making a very good point, which I clued in on as well. The reason they're where they are is because they are in an unincorporated district, not in a municipality. They're in a very isolated place. You don't have the same kind of bylaws or restrictions or regulations in place out there. They're out of sight, out of mind. The CFIA doesn't even have them on their radar. They're isolated, right? The CFIA never would have shown up at the farm had it not been that things got so freaking bad that they got reported. Because the CFIA, like many government agencies, including police, they're generally responsive. They'll respond to a complaint, but otherwise they kind of just leave people alone. Like they look the other way. They don't go looking for trouble, but if there's a report of a bird flu outbreak or whatever, they'll respond to it. Now, they were trying to hide it. They were trying to cover it all up, but they were doing a crappy job because they were leaving the dead birds, the 69 dead ostriches laying out in the open, covered with some tarps loosely, and wildlife was coming in and eating the dead birds, the dead infected birds. And somebody got so upset with the horrific situation out there. It got so bad. That's why they filed a complaint with the CFIA. That's why the CFIA showed up out there, and it was terrible. Now, the
CFIA's the complaint was the neighbor seen a dead carcass in the field for over 18 hours and left unattended, right? And they seen birds eaten at the ostrich that was laying there. One thing I want to point out about. By the way, that was a great conversation you had with Mr. Singh. I am going to say this. I played close attention to what he was saying. Now, he states that in 2020, he went to the farm. Now, Mr. David Belinski told me that somebody went to the farm there to go look at the farm, but he told me he changed his story twice with me. He told me at first that it was Dr. Tsukamoto. And when I told him that I spoke to the Japanese university, and they did not confirm at all that anybody went there, other than that they do have a rotational students that come to Canada and do a tour here in Canada for different scientific studies and stuff, but they do not interact in studies. They just, or they'll just come for a tour as a vacation thing, right? So when the claim was that the students went there, we checked that. They made a claim that Tsukamoto went there. We checked that, and that's not true. So then when I confronted Belinski about that, and because he said that at first, and I said, well, the university denies those claims. He's like, oh, no. He changed his story to it was his partner. And I'm like, well, who's his partner? And he gave me this Akashi guy. And I'm like, okay. So, the story keeps changing. But what I'm starting to think here is if in fact Singh seen, let's say, approximately 20 birds in 2020, it's like that article stated in 2018. They were on par of trying to mass produce ostriches as it's like a puppy mill, right? And they were no capability to have the infrastructure in place to have the capacity to maintain all those birds. So obviously you're open to disease. You're open because it's open air, it's free range, right? So you have other migratory birds coming in that could potentially be sick or whatever. I mean, there's a whole factor there. But the whole thing is, I'm really starting to wonder, there's some things he said, and I'm wondering, well, the person that said that went to the farm, was it Singh that went to the farm really? And then they figured out that this was just all smoke and mirrors, because it goes back to my original thing about Stu Greenberg, about being and that's in my own opinion, by the way, has nothing to reflect to this show. I just want to make sure. So Rick's not responsible for that. This is my own opinion. I believe that Stu Greenberg is a con artist, and I think he's been conning. And part of this is this just been an ongoing layering of fabricated lies over lies over lies, right? No research, no nothing. I mean, you have a company who went and looked at the farm and just basically told us that they were in no capacity to do what they were doing. And just for the freedom fighters who support this, you're going to tell me you support a company or a farm that was willing to spray masks to put on people when we're all fighting against the system? What are we going to say?
The technology that they were trying to develop was to aerosolize a vaccine that people would inhale, possibly even unknowingly.
So who's the freedom fighter now? We're standing up for the truth right now. You think I want to see somebody wearing a mask with an aerosol virus, or that's going to just, or whatever? I mean, what about the conspiracy theorists within a movement that are against all this stuff that they claim? Okay, so what happened to the 5G nanoparticles in the masks? We could go on about stuff, but at the end of the day, Rick, it's this. We have people who call themselves freedom fighters who were standing up against the narrative, saying, no, what you're doing is wrong and the virus is wrong, and look at the side effects of all the people you're jabbing and all this stuff, but then go support something that was developing a vaccine and then going further to put it in a mask.
The anti-vaxxers are out there supporting the farm that was involved in research to develop a vaccine.
It
makes no sense, right?
It's an oxymoron.
Yeah, it's upside down. It's because they're being manipulated psychologically on an emotional level. They don't care about any of the facts. Just save the ostriches. That's what it has come down to.
You know what I don't understand, Rick, was we have, in this country, what bothers me the most, and I've been an advocate for years on this one thing. I used to live on the streets, okay? So I watched my friends die when the opiate epidemic first started here in Canada. And one by one, on a weekend, there's three of my friends just OD'd, right? So you think that the community I was living in at the time would do anything, and I spoke up against it. And then all of a sudden we started seeing tent cities because like all this broken immigration policy affecting our social programs, putting more strain on it. And then it's, there's a cause and effect to that. So my thing is, right now in this country, we have more Canadians living in 10 cities that are about to freeze this winter. Okay. We're not housing them. We're not offering them any help. There's that. There's these people, there's so many different things affecting our country that are more important to fight for. Right?
Yes. And people are upset about the birds.
I get it, man. But we have a country that's just been hijacked by globalists that are just ripping it right at the seams, and everybody's just like, okay, let's worry about this. Or it's just theatrics to me. It makes no sense. And you're right. It's a psychological, there's some type of psychological conditioning going on, because it's happening both with the left and the right. On the left, I call it Stockholm syndrome, post-COVID PTSD trauma that the government is using continuously, and they're not, instead of addressing the mental health issue, they're playing on it, right? And on the right, we have the people. It's the same thing. These people are traumatized by the lockdowns and stuff, and they're still not awake or whatever, and they're just jumping on all these conspiracy protests and worrying about the smallest things that actually don't matter.
Yeah. Speaking of freezing, those ostriches were freezing to death.
Yeah,
and I mean that because the farm never provided a proper facility, even as a farm or a home for the ostriches, in my view, and not just my view, but just it's empirically evident. You look at those ostriches are native to Africa in areas where the climate is very moderate. It never really it doesn't get cold in those areas where they're native to, in the way that it does in British Columbia. And the ostriches do not, like a dog, get more fur on them in winter, because they're not built that way genetically. So and they don't have proper shelter for them. They don't have heated facilities for those ostriches out there. They're left outside year round, open range, but not just open range, just in a great big giant, how many acres is it? 800 acres, I think. Big giant field, fenced in, left wide open, never even put the netting up to protect the open air pond that the CFIA told them they had to protect to keep out, other waterfowl and other birds, to prevent cross infection back and forth. They said, no, can't do it. Why would we do that? They never complied with that. They never did anything to protect those ostriches in ways like that. There are documented incidents where the ostriches would get injured by running and slipping and on the ice and being injured in fencing and dying as a result, freezing to death in the winter out there, because they're not native to that kind of climate. And
I just want to comment on that.
Shelters.
I actually want to comment about that. So another reason why I care about animals, and I worked on a farm. Okay. So my first time, actually it was the second time I worked on a farm. The second farm job I ever had was in Ontario, and it was in Hanmer, Ontario. I was working for Richelieu Acres, and I worked there for 3.5 years. Okay. I'd get up early in the morning and go work. And we had a petting zoo, which had 3 ostriches. Okay. And we had different types of animals for the petting zoo. Now in the wintertime, you are correct, Rick, to say that there's proper shelter that's heated. And especially for the ostriches, for the climate, because we had animals that had to be specifically cared for because they were from a different climate, and we had to always make them feel comfortable. So when it came to the ostriches that they had, we had to had an extended stall facility in the barn just for the ostriches, and it was heated. Right. So even all the other animals that we had, everything was heated. It was very well taken care of. And so when I heard that the practice was that they were leaving the ostriches out to freeze like that, especially in this climate, on this part of where they are, at -40, -50, you can actually read up on some of the research studies of climate regarding ostriches and the skeletal construct of their body and ice cold temperatures, and read up the study and what it says. So, they should have had enclosures that were heated and properly set up with the infrastructure to maintain that amount of birds, and they never did.
Of course not. 400 birds, that's a lot of shelter area. Like that becomes a major operation. They never had that. So not only were they not properly equipped for scientific research, because you need to control your environment. You can't have external factors when you're conducting any kind of legitimate scientific research. You need to control your factors, right? You come up with a hypothesis, you go through the process, you conduct your experiments, you observe, you get to an endpoint where you come up with conclusions.
Yeah, somebody said that BC doesn't get that cold. So
yes, it does.
And Edgewood, BC is in the northern part of. I'm just gonna take a look at the mapping here for a second, because I'm always good to fact check. You know me, man. Let's see here.
My brother lives out in that area of BC, and I talked to him in the winter, and they get a lot of snow sometimes.
So they're up there. And then they're close to the snow peaks too of the Rockies. Yeah. So I mean, what's the average temperature for Edgewood, BC in the wintertime? Let's see, average. Okay, maybe not. -15 to -6 on average.
Yeah. But here, it can get down very, very cold at times. So sometimes it gets down, not all the time, but it can get as low as -35 to -40 Celsius.
No, it does. It does. And that's true, because I live in Edmonton. Okay. And we're close. Like me and my wife, we go to the Rockies a lot. Okay. So on the foothills of the Rockies, I'm not lying to anybody, but if people spent time on the foothills, you'll know exactly what I'm saying. The weather is so unpredictable. Okay. For one. And two, when the clouds are banking and the cold front comes in, I'm not shitting you, man. I've watched it where, in the middle of the summertime, it drops to -30 and we got a blanket of snow for 2 days.
Like what was Karen and Dave doing in the winter when it hit to -40? Did they bring all 400 ostriches into their home and let them sleep in their bed with them at night because they had names for all their pet ostriches that aren't pets at all? This is a bunch of bunk. That was, in my view, that is abuse. That's animal abuse. To take an animal like that, leave it outside all winter long, at times subjecting it to that kind of cold when it's not acclimatized to that genetically. That's not right. I bring my dog inside when it gets too damn cold. And sometimes he don't want to come inside, but I'm like, it's too cold for you. Get your ass in here.
Well, even the farm in Ontario, that has a few hundred ostriches, they have an enclosure for the winter for them.
Yeah.
And it's an open field, the same sort of thing with Edgewood, but it's a lot more up to par. Like it's a modernized, they keep up with their farm and their infrastructure. Like I spoke to them. They were really nice to answer my questions. A really nice couple.
So, I mean, the allegations from the farm aimed at the CFIA, saying that they were abusing the birds. They weren't feeding them properly. They were, not administering electrolytes, and they're this concerned about the welfare of their birds. What was going on before? What was going on for years, decades even, because the farm was originally set up back in the 1990s.
I believe that this whole thing is... Okay, so this is the one thing that I'm going to just state this to everybody, and this came from Dave Belinski. So when this all started, okay, the media got attention because of comments that Katie made on a CBC video, basically stating a lie. Okay, that's basically what it is. Now, when the freedom fighters, and this is the thing, I'm not going to lie to people either, because I can give myself some credibility right now by stating this. I worked closely with Randy Hillier and Chelsea Hillier in Ontario when we were protesting COVID, and we split up the province in two. I was responsible for Northern Ontario from Barrie all the way up, and Chelsea was responsible from half of Barrie all the way down. And we had the biggest protests. Okay, so, and then the Freedom Convoy. So I have credibility for what I'm about to say. Now, during that time, as we were organizing and we were setting up people that we could trust in different cities to organize for no more lockdowns and get our no more lockdown signs in communities everywhere and spread the word, well, we had people who were automatically trying to infiltrate no more lockdowns. Okay, I'm not going to mention names, but there was a few. And some of those few are still lingering around the freedom movement. And Belinski even stated that some of these individuals went there and basically are trying to run the show. There was a basic, and apparently there was an argument that, and this again is coming from David Belinski, telling me that there was an argument one night between two individuals about who was going to be the spokesperson. Okay, so this is all people from that, from the start in 2020, okay, when we started protesting. And these people started infiltrating, we would say probably by the end of 2020, when we were doing protests in Toronto and Barrie and Sudbury. The same people are the same people who are out there right now, the same people who are trying to mislead people. And I've said this over and over and over. And what credibility do those people have by? They have no credibility. The only credibility is they show up at places, they cause shit, they stir up problems, and they grift for donations. And that is what Belinski had said to me about some individuals over there, and that was a big problem. So when you,
yeah, because the whistleblower that I'm going to run the clips from actually echoes what you're saying right now.
Yeah, man, play it, because like, I totally agree with that. What's going on right there, because it happened to us. Like, I'm not going to lie, man. When I was working with Randy flat out told me we had a list of individuals that we knew that were trying to come in and cause division and stuff. And these people are still around, except for a couple of them. One of them left the country, right? And they're Chris Sky. But, you know, I'm just saying, like, and the same people that gave me a problem when I held, like, I'm the one who had, when the convoy got booted out of Ottawa, okay, in 2022, that summer, July 1st, I was able to, with my friends Roadrunner and Hillary, be able to get the KOA campground for a Freedom Fighter Canada Day event. And 10,000 freedom fighters from across the country came from the convoy. And we had a great fireworks display, everything. But I'm not going to lie to people, but there were certain people that did show up, okay? And I'm going to be respectful, and I'm not going to say names right now. But those people showed up, and when they did show up, my event turned into a fucking shit show almost because of those people. And those people are involved in this right now. Same people. So that needs to be said.
This person went out to the farm, believed in the cause, volunteered, helped even to generate substantial donations in the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. And then says that basically they were treated like crap, and that was sort of what happened to a lot of the volunteers out there, because this person isn't the only one who ended up leaving disgruntled and upset. And that's just one of the reasons this person called to talk to me about what her experience was.
Permits and all that sort of stuff. I had kept telling them for a long time, you guys need to have proper insurance, you need waivers, you need, it's coming from someone with a background, right?
Yeah. Sorry, actually, this is a different clip. This is her talking about ownership of the farm in question. And I know that you've dug into this too, Jason. But in this clip, talking about advice being given, suggestion that they should be carrying some sort of insurance because you have so many protesters coming out there, because they're having conducting concerts, a farm aid thing,
you don't need permits or insurance.
You don't not permits, but insurance, because anyway, and waivers and so on. But indicating that in this person's opinion, the reason none of that happened is because there were issues surrounding the ownership of the property.
All that sort of stuff. I had kept telling them for a long time, you guys need to have proper insurance, you need waivers, you need, this is coming from someone with a vent background, right?
Yeah.
And I realized later, because they don't own their land, that's why they weren't getting permits and insurance. That's something that the landowner has to do. And I doubt the landowner would do that for them. So they're operating like these events without permits and proper insurance, which I think is just crazy. So anyway, I left that Monday, and as I was telling you before, I was going to do the convoy with them. I'm sorry, just a second. I'm like, no.
I think I know who that was.
Yes, so just one of many issues, right? That this person raises. I disguise the voice because
I'll tell you this much.
I'll tell you this much. A little bit, but yeah.
So this I do know because I did this myself. When it comes to private property for lands, okay, so and it includes campgrounds and farmland, okay. Mm-hmm. If you own the land or you have permission by the owner, you do not need insurance to hold an event. You do not need insurance for any protests or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think it was like a mandatory. It's a suggestion.
Yeah, but you do.
Issues, right?
But the one thing
plus protection for the people out there.
Yeah, but the one thing that is required is that in order to have an event like that, okay, the property owner has to have insurance on the property for liabilities, which covers that anyways. So the organizers or whatever, they don't need anything as long as the person. So if they didn't, and somebody did get hurt, and then yeah, they're liable 100%.
Yeah, and liability insurance is conditional upon certain situations, right? So, if you have liability insurance, that's based on running a farm, not an event like a concert necessarily. So
yeah, like we did it. No, we did it with a concert, and it's not the first time I've done that too. So like in Ontario.
Well, anyway,
but no, you can do it.
The point is that they were just bringing up the ownership issue. Mm-hmm. Of the property, which has been a question for people, and I know that that there are different explanations out there.
I asked Belinski
just another
about
weird thing.
I did ask Belinski. Okay, so I asked him about that. I said, I heard that there's an eviction order in place because apparently that's what I read. Okay, that somewhere that there was an eviction order in place, and he told me that there's 3 parcels of property there, and the one parcel with the farm where the birds were his property that he owned, and that where Karen lives she's renting from the in-laws, and then the property that was up in discussion in courts was the other property, which is now apparently owned by a company that they own. That's what he had told me. And I was like, okay, so apparently the property in question up for eviction is Karen Epperson's place. She hasn't been paying her $1,400 or $1,300 a month rent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just very clear that this farm has a long history of financial distress. And when the pandemic hit, they couldn't get their birds to market, couldn't get them slaughtered because the abattoirs were working on reduced schedules. All the farms around there were having trouble, closed down, couldn't get their birds to market. So they were in financial trouble. They couldn't, their business was dead. So they had to do something. That's why they pivoted to research or whatever the hell they were doing out there. But it just compounded their financial problems. And then they realized that, hey, with all this COVID money flying around, with all these research grants and federal grants and subsidies out there's a lot of money to be had. So they started to pursue that, not only through the on-farm injections of the birds with the COVID antigens to produce artificially, not naturally, artificially induce the production of antibodies in these eggs, which they planned on selling, but also to sell the birds to other farms, to get them involved in the scheme. And then they were approaching other companies like Breathe Medical, trying to get them to buy into this whole idea that these birds were super birds and we're going to save humanity. And so let's, produce masks with ostrich infused antibodies. And then, this whistleblower comes back in this conversation with me and talks about how the volunteers were treated, how this person was treated. She says that she was treated very poorly and eventually was sort of told, don't come back, even though she had been working to help raise funds and was very committed to the cause.
Katie, especially, and Glenn, we're all about unity, and and love and family, but yet she's turned around and really disrespected and mistreated so many people that helped her. It was disgusting. And these people are all, paying donations and everything, and I don't know, it's hard for us to watch.
They were even charging admission to the farm at one point. I know that for sure, where they were telling people to come to the farm, when you show up to participate in the protest, they were charging a fee at the gate.
What?
Yeah. I don't know that they were doing it the whole time, but there was a period of time where they were doing that to raise funds for the farm.
They raised
charging
a
fee.
Money. Yeah, they
so
raised a lot.
Pay to protest. I'm like,
yeah.
what?
I just
donate
don't
if you want
support...
to, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, like my thing is, okay, so this is where I stand on the policies. Okay, so you asked me this earlier. So in 2023, you could look this up. I planned a 5-day protest in Ottawa after the convoy. Mm-hmm. And instead of barking at the government like we usually do, people that I work with have always said, Jay, why don't we look for solutions? Like address the issue and then work on solutions. So I thought it was imperative that I put a team together, spend 2 months and getting my team to call all the industries in Canada, as many as we could: farmers, fishery wharfs, the mining sector, steel manufacturing companies, everything that makes this country tick. Okay. Now, the same thing from every industry was basically the same consensus, that there was too much red tape, too much middleman, and the manipulation of market pricing, right? And excuses as to why some sectors one morning wake up and the cost of, say, one product that they need to manufacture or grow with triples in price, shit like that. So these are unconstitutional policies that are being dealt up by the federal governments at the federal government level. And this is, so what we did is for that 2-month period, we put together a 60-day page report. Okay. And then we protested for 5 days on every day. And then finally, the Conservative government met with us, Larry Brock, and forget the other guy's name. Anyways, we met with Larry Brock and that, and I was with some freedom fighters were with me when we did this. I handed him the portfolio of the report, and they basically, at the end of it all, after they reviewed it, they said, they agreed that everything that we presented was unconstitutional. And these are things, there was a lot of policies that we could work together to lobby to change. And this is across industry wide, everything that makes our country tick, right? But when you look at this whole debacle about the CFIA and the stomp out policy, it sort of falls and aligns with, there is some, maybe we should just take a look at it. If there's another way, yes. But I think that, like, I listen to farmers also who have followed the rules. Okay. There's a lot of farmers I talk to that have followed the rules, and they've been compensated more than plenty, and they've restarted and they have no problem. And they're thankful that they didn't contaminate other farms. Right. So there's that too. But at the end of the day, what we need to look at our farmers are things that make sense. So here's one: milk producers. So a carton of milk is $6 at the shelf. Farmers are making 25 to 30 cents a carton. The rest goes to corporations and government taxation and stuff. And then don't forget all the liters of milk being wasted down the drain because it's governed by the CFIA. You can't produce more than X amount of liters a day. Otherwise it's going down the drain.
Well, that's not the CFIA that is involved in supply side management. Those are milk marketing boards. They varies from province to province.
What I meant to say is that kind of situation. Yeah, and that's the kind of situations where, I mean, like, maybe not that CFIA, but you know where I'm getting at. These are issues where, well, maybe we could bring the price down of milk if we produced more milk and offered it to our country at a reduced rate. You're going to sell more wholesale, right, on volume.
Yes and no. I often look at milk because I know this is a hot button issue, especially for the PPC and Maxime Bernier. He lost to the leadership of the Conservative government over that issue, and he, but I sometimes will compare the price of milk, and we can do it right now, with what goes on between Ontario and Michigan, just right over the border. So if I go Windsor milk price today. And we'll look, here's No Frills. Oh, that's in Kawartha. Okay, well, that's Kawartha. Here's Food Basics. So let's bring it up. And I've got more from this whistleblower, by the way. We're off track, but it's here we are looking at milk prices. But it's all agriculture.
But what I'm trying to get at is that there are some areas, like some farmers complaining that the price of fertilizer tripled in one night, overnight, right? Stuff like that.
These are all issues that are controversial and policy. Yes. So $5.69 for that's a bag of milk. Yeah, $6.25 for 2% Beatrice milk.
Yeah.
This is at Food Basics in Toronto. Okay. So it's actually going to be a little bit more expensive in Toronto than it would probably be here. I know, for instance, that my wife purchased milk this week for half that because they put it on sale. No doubt as a loss leader, but it was like $3 and change. So she bought, extra milk. So now I've got milk coming out the wazoo. Now let's go to Detroit. Detroit Kroger milk price. And here's Kroger milk. 1 gallon jug. Bring it up on the screen.
You're probably paying so a gallon it would be for for a 3 bag would be a gallon.
It's comparable, right? 3.78 liters per gallon. And
should
the internet
be
is still
should
lagging.
Be like $4.
Every time I go and look, like it's always very comparable if this computer and the internet would cooperate. Let me pull it down, try to rekindle this. There it is, $3.89 US. So
yeah, we pay $2 here in Alberta. We pay $2 more Canadian.
So that's $5.44 Canadian.
Yeah.
And what did I say it was? $6.25.
$6.25.
So you're looking at a difference today of like 75 cents. And that's roughly, right?
And what's funny though is that when you talk to the dairy producers, they're telling us that they don't make that much. They make like 30 cents off he said off a 2-liter carton. They were making 30 to 35 cents profit off each carton, and the rest goes to the corporations and
I don't know that I believe that. The whole supply management system is designed to protect the farmers. That's really what it's there for. It's not so much to protect the even the grocery store chains or the
well, I know one thing. I know one thing's happening. I actually talked to some folks at Loblaws about this. I said, people are noticing this every 21 day to 90 day price hijack. What they'll put these yellow stickers, which is spit out from the main system, okay, and it goes to all the franchises. They put it up on the shelves, and then the price increases every so often, right? So it was like the same thing with like a pound of butter. Like I remember paying $3.99 a pound of butter. I'm paying almost $7 to $8 a pound now. It's ridiculous, right? So $6.99, $7 a pound of unsalted or salted butter, and even the no-name stuff, like it's still $5.99. So when you start noticing these prices, so buddy told me that they're using an AI program, and not only are they using it, but Food Basics is using it. So I think that, like, for me, they're dictating the price by they're actually price fixing is what they're doing.
Well,
and here's another question too. What a farmer said to me, this is an oat farmer, okay, in Saskatchewan. This is a $22 million farm, and he grows oats, wheats, and he also grows cattle. Now, he told us that one morning he woke up and the price of fertilizer tripled. So when they called to ask, like, well, what's going on? Why is the price of fertilizer? The reason was because there's a war in Ukraine. But we're producing fertilizer on our own here in Canada. It has nothing to do with Ukraine. But that's what the reasoning was by the government. So again, like, when you look at these things, and this is coming
because
from the farmers.
fertilizer is an internationally traded commodity, and so as a commodity, it like same with oil, it's affected by the world price.
Yeah.
That's it's not just local, it's global in pricing scope, right? So it depends on how much supply and demand there is on the international markets, and that affects pricing here. Milk price at the retail level, not directly regulated in Canada and most provinces, but it is affected by the farm gate price, heavily influenced in that regard. So, price spikes. No, it's actually pretty stable dairy product at the retail level in Canada. But what you do get sometimes is you'll get a severe cut because of what happened at the supermarkets this week with my wife here. They were putting it out as a loss leader and taking a hit on it in order to get people in the stores to purchase other products where they make up the loss on other sales. But we're off track. Let me and the supply management systems are really designed to protect our food sovereignty, because without those, if you just open up the market, the Canadian farmers, the argument is that then opens up vulnerable industries, sectors to big corporate pressure, especially from the US side, which is what the Trump administration wants to do with the dairy industry, so that smaller Canadian farm operations would be swallowed up by big US agribusiness. That's the danger. That's why Canada resists the elimination of the supply management system for agribusiness in this country. But anyway, I digress. Let me run this clip of our whistleblower, who I believe here talks about what you were talking about earlier, and possible water contamination and sanitary conditions and not picking up the bird excrement.
I was disgusted by the pens. They were disgusting. And they were like just feeding them on the ground, like throwing the food on the ground for them. I don't know. These ostriches.
So that's just, an example of what was said. So there's that accusation from someone who was at the farm as a volunteer, their observations.
No, it was about, remember I said it was about people from the freedom movement infiltrating the farm.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah. But the point being that the farm making all these accusations, even suggesting that the CFIA that they should be charged and they're guilty of crimes. I'm just not buying it. They had veterinarians on site. Just the CFIA didn't go there and abuse the ostriches. And
again, it comes down to, I hate to say this. I mean, there's a lot of people who go down the conspiracy extreme rabbit hole, and I've seen a lot of that. And I know I've been watching it. I have been really paying attention to what's going on there. There's a lot of independent journalists that have covered some stuff, and I don't look at what they're presenting. I look at what's going on. And I also, like you, have spoken to people who have left the farm, and basically, what I was told. I was told different things. But again, the consensus with the people you're talking to is the same thing. So for me, when I'm glad that people woke up and saw it for what it was and what it is. And I just feel bad for some people who are getting sucked into the psychological. I've even said it. For me, to be honest with you, it's some type of psyop. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion, right? And I'm all about counter propaganda and stuff. And if people don't believe me, I mean, go to my website. I have tons of information on my intel section about controlled propaganda, mind control, and these are actual studies that are proven with science, and this is what they're doing. So, I mean, you got to wake up to that fact. So why else would you suck in a bunch of people into a place and raise almost millions of dollars of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
On a lie?
And that's where they lose me, because of the crazy stories they spun up where they were saying that the CFIA was killing the birds in the middle of the night in contravention of the Supreme Court of Canada's stay order before that the decision came down, where they were saying, oh, now the birds are missing. We can't count the birds. They had people like counting the birds in photos, suggesting that these birds were being illegally culled in advance of the Supreme Court of Canada decision. That was bullshit. Then they went from that to an even greater extreme and said that not only were they killing the birds, they were and taking them away in big blue dumpsters, which they were chasing and following down the highway. They said that they were liquefying the birds in a horrific fashion. No doubt, because that ties into these stories that we've been hearing of late, which are to some degree true, of like funeral homes liquefying bodies. And these sound like horrific stories, but this is actually an option that people have now, instead of, say, cremation, where your body is liquefied. I hate to be the bearer of gruesome news, but that's a new trend among even funeral homes. So they're talking about liquefying the birds on premises, but I don't think they had any. They were showing regular farm implements being towed behind tractors and pictures. It was bunk, complete bunk. Mr. Craden again pushing that narrative on his.
No, I did see this. Okay, the only thing that. Okay, so the one argument, all right, that I only agree with. Now, they went there and decontaminated the site. They put it under quarantine. They culled the birds. Mm-hmm. They were using biosecurity methods to quarantine and disinfect it. Now, I watched the live stream of Daisy, okay, and the RCMP truck was leaving, and it was all full of mud that drove in the field where the birds were.
I'm talking about, Jason, before the call.
Before the call. Okay.
For like 2 or 3 weeks, they were making this to-do about missing birds, and they had this theory that the CFIA.
Oh yeah. That's another thing. Okay, so I remember that
they were liquefying them.
Yeah, and they said, "Oh, we're missing all these birds." So Daisy and them put up that video with all the birds in the pens, and I actually counted them. I'm not lying, Rick. I actually counted them, and there was I stopped at 330. There was still a few more. So there were over 330 birds when I counted them. And maybe I might be off, let's say plus minus, whatever. So let's just hypothetically say there was 325.
The CFIA hasn't had no incentive, no reason to kill those birds in advance. It would have been stupid for them to do it. They weren't doing it. It would be crazy for them to do it, a liability for them to do it, a risk for them to do it. They don't have any reason to take, because they're in control. They don't need to.
Yeah.
But the farm, the influencers, the activists out there, they wanted to spin up this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and use that kind of fear, uncertainty, and doubt again and over again to get people emotionally engaged with this thing. And then they gamified the information warfare campaign by getting people to play Count the Ostrich.
I'm going to say something on behalf of some of the freedom fight. Sure. I can't. Okay, just give me 1 second. I got to answer this to see who texted me there. But this is in regards to. There were certain freedom fighters. I can't say who, but I did talk to them, and this is in regards to that Ostrich Fest they had with the music and stuff with Tamara and everybody, Jamie Next and all that. Okay, so I spoke to some people who were there, that went there, that are well known. And I talked to them the night before this thing happened, this Ostrich Fest started. It was the night before. And in the phone conversation I had with everybody was that they were debating on going through with it. And the only reason why they went through with it was because as a collective, they didn't want to get attacked online, and they were just trying to keep the peace. So they just went through with it anyways. And ever since, you haven't seen them say anything about it. So just keep that in mind. And those who know who it is, you'll see they haven't said anything since. So that just goes to show you, okay. But then there's also these other influencers, so-called freedom fighters, influencers. I call them a pain in the ass, but they're grifting, right? It's all about bait and clicks. It's all about how many views they're going to get on their videos. It's not about any cause at all. It's all about them. They're getting money off of that. Listen, I create content all the time with Alberta Radio, and I worked hard in the last year to get it up so that Meta pays me. And yeah, Meta does sometimes pay you. Like next month, it'll be the first time I make $1,000 US off Facebook next month. So when these guys are pushing content, they know they need the content exposure, the likes, the engagement, all the shares, all that, because it matters. They get paid for it. And that's the truth facts, folks. And especially people who say, send me stars. And you're sending, I love the fact that people send me stars. But my thing is I always push content about what's going on around us, right? I'm not protesting. I'm not doing it for me. I'm actually trying to make a business out of this as a media company. That's what my goal is. So you have to start, and that's what we're doing. But these guys ain't about that, Rick. They're not about the truth. They're not about fair reporting. They're not about actually, hey, what's really going on here? Because if these true freedom fighters were about freedom and truth, I don't believe they'd be supporting or would have supported anything that they were doing, because it was going against the narratives of what we believe in, right? Like, it just makes no sense to me, Yeah.
And the thing is, they said that they wanted to save those ostriches. Those ostriches were so special. They were unique. They possessed these antibodies. And if you kill these birds, all that research, all those years of work will be gone forever. They had to save all 400 of them, or however many they were unable to count. But they're also missing an important little detail. Those are not the only ostriches that have been researched or used for research for COVID and even bird flu. They weren't really doing proper research or any research into bird flu out at the farm at all. They just made a claim with no research at all to back up any of their claims.
Oh, and one very important thing. Okay. I got told this by the Ostrich Farm in Ontario, and this has to do with research and science. So there's different breeds of ostriches. Now, the ostriches in Edgewood, BC, are for meat ostriches that are a genetic from an African race of ostriches, right? But they're only for meat and oil productions for cosmetics. Now, the only scientific research study done on those birds are for skeletal research and for cosmetic research, stuff like that. And there was nothing ever mentioned about genetics. But hear me out. Now, Mr. Dr. Tsukamoto, okay, his breed of birds aren't the same breed of birds as the ones in Edgewood. They're specifically bred for scientific research on gene to create antigens and things like this. They're specifically bred for that. So that has to be also said, and you can look this up too. You can actually look it up. It's a scientific fact.
Yeah, and the point you're making for me is that these birds might be gone, but Tsukamoto still has the research birds. So if you're worried about research being lost, or that any of this potential for
it was his research. It was his research to begin with.
His research to begin with. He has his own birds. He's been conducting research, injecting the birds himself, as we've seen even in the videos. So if you want that kind of research done, then leave it to the actual scientist who still has birds and continues to do his work. So we don't need to worry about it. We didn't lose anything in that regard. those birds out at Edgewood might be gone, but it wasn't a proper facility to begin with. There was nothing special about those birds at all. And the real actual research was being done at the university in Japan, not at the farm.
Exactly. That's the truth.
And yet, what did the people out there, what were you going to save those birds for? You were either going to save them for meat sale, so they're going to slaughter the things and send them to people so they can eat them because it's a business, or you're going to condemn them, as the whistleblower says, to a life as lab rats.
Had nobody I knew as volunteers agreed with the science and with the research, and even worse, what they were doing with the ostriches. Right?
Because she says that they were basically being used as lab rats. Her words, lab rats. So you talk about humane treatment. Did the CFIA abuse them by culling them, by shooting them? I don't know. You can make your own assessment in that regard, but I'll guarantee you, if they lived, they would have been condemned to a longer life of abuse. As and they'd already been subjected to years and years of abuse, being left outside in the cold year round in harsh conditions that they should not have been left out in. Some of them died because of exposure, and they were being abused as lab animals over and over and over again. And that is something that the farm owners themselves attest to, talked about. It's not right, in my view.
There's other things too in Katie's story. Like she was on De Beers or whatever that guy's name, I forget his name, but anyway, she was on there saying that, and she said this on other shows too, that the way that the CFIA did the PCR testing and stuff was all bullshit. Mm-hmm. Well, I actually looked it up. Okay, now when the CFIA actually does it's called a quantum PCR. So it's a qPCR test. It's 100% accuracy for avian flu or what they're looking to detect. Okay. So this is not a hit or miss thing. These are accurate, 100 scientifically proven. So Katie's trying to make an insinuation that they sent a sample to wherever. No, the quantified test is done on site. It's done right there. You can get an answer in 30 minutes, boom, and it gives you a 100% accuracy of the birds infected. Now, apparently they tested 2 birds, and that's how this all started, right? Like and so again, what makes this farm so special versus all the other farms that lost their animals? And this is the thing, they cooperated and got compensated. And do you see them complaining? No.
In fact, I don't know, in the last couple of years of poultry operations, bird farms of any kind that have gone through this stamping out policy, they've all survived. Mm-hmm. I don't know if maybe one. And there have been, I think in BC alone, in like over the past year or so, about 100 farms affected by this last year and a half. So, and they all survive because they are fairly compensated. They cooperate, they recover, and they move on. But
well, they said there was in BC, there was like this year alone, there was 266 farms that tested positive for it. So, I mean, and everybody complied.
Yeah. There was just a petting zoo out in Alberta. I can't remember the name of it. It was a story that we covered a couple of times here over the past month. And they had birds infected, chickens. They reported it. They dealt with it. People were, you're hearing these people who are afraid that the CFIA is going to go from farm to farm to farm to farm and kill all the animals, including pets, because of the crap that's been being spewed by some of these influencers out at Universal Ostrich.
Yeah, they're not. And that's another thing too, people need to understand. The CFIA
the petting zoo is back online. They're already open for business. They were open again, I believe, in time for Halloween.
The CFIA just doesn't show up on a farm and say, hey, where they don't just do that. I actually, every case that I've read, okay, on the CFI's website, because I actually looked after that lady, I got that video of that other farmer who stated that, and she's correct, like there's an outline in every case, and in every case, it was the farmer who reported it, and then in very odd cases, it was a complaint by a neighbor or a local farmer, right? And everybody complied though, right? So in the case of this farm particularly, they didn't report the case, and it was reported by a local. And I mean,
didn't have to be this way.
It could have just
as far as I'm
cooperated.
concerned, it's on the farm.
Yeah.
The way, even the way the birds in the end were killed is on the farm, because they didn't have to be killed that way. The farm didn't have to endure this level of financial distress in terms of the loss of their livestock, because, and they may still be compensated, but the CFIA is no longer obligated to do it.
No, apparently, apparently I can't remember where I read this. I'm going to have to go look again, but I'm almost certain that it says in the act that the CFIA offers full compensation if the farmer complies and the farmer does everything possible and does the work. Now, in the event that you resist and you fight the CFIA, and the CFIA has to spend resources and money to go in and do it because you didn't comply, you're getting the bill.
That's right. And that's why I also take, this is where they lose me again. These people out at the farm, you even hear the complaint from some of these influencers saying, look at all the money being wasted on the RCMP. Look at all the money being wasted on the CFIA coming out here. You know what? None of that would have happened. You wouldn't need all those police officers out there had the farm just cooperated, done what was responsible, it kept the impact on other farms and the community in mind, not being selfish about it. If they had just done the responsible thing and hadn't turned it into a circus out there where you had people threatening, people fighting, the community at odds, and you had to get the cops out there to separate people, to keep the peace, and work overtime in an isolated remote location where all these officers had to be put up in hotels in nearby communities, and just turn it into this big fiasco. That's because they turned it into a circus. Otherwise you would never have to put all those cops out there. That's an expense to us as taxpayers. And that's not because of the CFIA or the government. That's because of the protest.
Well, remember, Rick, like I said, the same actors, right?
Yeah. So it's not productive. It doesn't help our community. It doesn't help our country. It doesn't help the birds. Didn't help the birds in the end. It doesn't help the protesters, because the farm gets the money, and all those protesters who spent months out there in some cases, I guess they got to live in a tent for free all that time, but not working at their expense. This is a sacrifice that a lot of people made for that. Mm-hmm. And people are still being asked to sacrifice. It costs people a big portion of their lives. And it's
almost like a cult.
Yes, it's abusive.
I hate to say it, but that's like,
crazy.
I know that the people I've done protests with, we would have never, that's the first thing we do. We look at what's behind the cause. And is it like, not everything, like, some people will say, well, it's harsh to say it's not worth fighting for. But at the end of the day, I look at, well, I got my fellow Canadians on the streets, right? Who am I going to fight?
Fine, but don't put people in positions where they're going to get arrested or
but they're making a mockery of it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right. They turn it into a circus, and a lot of people end up paying a price.
Yeah.
And, how many people do you know, Jason, within the freedom movement, such as it is, who have lost homes, who have lost savings, who have lost jobs, lost families, because they taken too far. They take it too far.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. Like, a lot of us that have stood up, I mean, we've lost everything, and we'll fight for a cause that's just the way we are, right?
And it doesn't, in the end, it doesn't strengthen the movement, if you want to call it that. It doesn't leave the people involved stronger. It leaves them weaker. I don't advocate for it. I don't like it. I see it as abusive, where some people work in the grift, get all like, and literally in this case, like half a million or better or whatever, half could be, who knows how much money. And over time, even more. Meanwhile, the people on the front lines, the people who show up and are charged a fee to get in the gate, to pay to protest, they're paying a price.
Oh, here's one I'm going to tell you about. I'm friends with Chief Cody Thomas of Enoch First Nations here in Alberta. So it's like on the border of Edmonton and that. Anyways, he's a new chief, and he's a young guy, right? And I've known him. I met him through my adopted mom. So we were talking about this, what was going on over there. And it was just around the time where what's her face from Manitoba, Cifico, showed up there, right? So he knew that I was friends with Cifico and that, and a lot of people know this. And I got a phone call right away, man. You're not going over there and supporting that shit, are you? No. Why? And he's like, she has no right to be there. And actually what she did pissed off the Sinix First Nations over there, right? It did. And Sinix made a public statement because she actually made me look like a fool. That's the reason why I got a phone call, because I seen a thing and it said on Facebook that some people from the res were over there and they were going to put a stop to this, whatever it was. And I was like, oh, because apparently the farm existed in unceded territory. And I was like, oh shit. And I looked at the mapping, believe it or not, Rick, it's true. It's an unceded territory, but it's not what you think, right? So here you see, all the stuff going on. I got a phone call, not to support it, from a chief. I'm like, don't worry, Cody, man. I'm not even showing up there. Like, I'm with you on this. So I see Cifico show up. She does her thing. This whole debacle starts up. And again, like, it's making a mockery of things, right? Like, it's just unbelievable. And it's like it's like, if I compare this whole thing with the Ostrich Farm, and it's no offense to people that I respect too, but it's like I get up every day and on my X feeds or whatever I'm looking at, and I'm looking at the videos it's like watching a TV episode every day, honestly. And it's all propaganda. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, why are all these people there? Why are these influencers? What is it? Why? Like, what's the point? Why aren't you guys going up to politicians and saying, what the hell is going on in our country right now instead? Right? Like, makes no sense. You know what I mean? It just makes no sense to me. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the whole First Nations claim part of it, that stirred up a lot of shit amongst a lot of reserves across the country, just on that alone. And so if the farm thinks that they got support, they don't, and I think they know that, because there was a public statement made by Sinix First Nations. Yeah. So
and you're right there, my friend. You are tapping into a whole separate and huge issue that very few people really understand.
Yeah, man.
And we're going to dig into that maybe in a future broadcast.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something to definitely look into, because, I mean, and don't get me wrong, like, the reason why Cifico has some popularity within the freedom movement, and I do respect her too, because she did stand up to the Pope. Okay. And there's record of that in mainstream media, and I give her credit for what she did to stand up for the voices of the unheard voices, right? But since then, she's done some things, and I'm all about protocol and tradition. That's where you keep it amicable with everybody, right? And you follow those traditions. And there's some things that she's done where it's pissed off a lot of people, right? So she's running.
People are not sure what Jason is talking about. Cifico is the woman who stood up when the Pope visited Canada, went to Alberta, and she sang that song sort of in defiance. And that was broadcast live on national television in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, I give her props for that. I mean, that it took a lot of courage, but I mean, in our culture, like I'm Métis, so in our culture, it's, you know, she stood up for the voices that have been silenced for a long time, and that's what that song pretty much was. She was just, you know, and it was traditional thing, but it's just, it seems like it's like we have these individuals that pop up every so often around the country, and it gets a lot of attention, and I wonder sometimes if it's an actual federal psyop. You know,
Well, you said it watching a movie. We've been at this now for just a little over 3 hours, so we're going to wrap it up for tonight, folks. Any final thought, Jason?
well, folks, I'm just going to say this: if you're going to go and stand up for a protest, and, you know, look at look at the story behind what you're going to stand up for, make sure it's a cause that's going to help everybody, and read, you know, if someone's going to present why they're doing it and you're going to stand up behind it, you got to look at all of it before you jump in with 2 feet. And right now, the problem in our country is we have a population that's just it's damaged goods. So people are playing on that, and you just got to pay attention. So I hope people wake up, and that's basically what I'll leave it with.
Okay, and open invitation to Mr. Belinski or anybody from the farm that would like to come on the program and I guess set a record straight. If we got anything wrong, if I got anything wrong, I will certainly run a retraction, and I would look forward to getting some answers to some of the still unanswered questions from Mr. Belinski or anybody who can speak for the farm, especially on what happened to all those baby birds. And one other thing, be careful what you do follow, because if you're following a bunch of lies, it's basically all fake.
Yeah.
See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
Biden's about, Charlie's alive. Elvis flips burgers on the Lower East Side. 10 Trumps mask up on your phone. Shilling mean coins by remote drone. Graphene needles in your veins. Chemtrail sugar fries your brain. George Floyd's American hologram pie. Don't trust your lying eyes. It's all fake. It's all fake. The moon is a hoax. Give your head a shake. It's all fake. It's all fake. Your mama's a lizard. You're dead.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.